Thank you for that. Today is the 26th of May. It's 10 o'clock. This is the joint meeting of the Nye County Board of County Commissioners, the Nye County Board of Highway Commissioners, the Nye County Licensing and Liquor Board, the Nye County Board of Health as the governing body for the unincorporated town of Pahrump, and the governing body of the unincorporated towns of Beatty, Gabbs, Manhattan, and also the Board of Trustees for the Pahrump Pool District. Thank you for that. Deborah Strickland, Commissioner Strickland, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right. Item number 2 on the agenda is general public comment, up to 3-minute time limit per person. Actions will not be taken on matters considered during this period of time until specifically included on an agenda as an action item. Any general public comment? In Pahrump? Tonopah? Anybody on the phone?
Nobody in
No, Chair.
Tonopah, please.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Sam. So I'm going to close general public comment and open up commissioners and managers' comment. This is limited to announcements or topics, issues proposed for a future workshop or agenda. Commissioner Jabbour.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here today, and we will do the best that we can, and that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Blendo.
Good morning. Nothing new to report.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Nothing other than what I had last week.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody, other managers? Do you have anything? Okay.
I do have something. I wanted to make everyone aware that there is a Mountain Falls Golf Tournament being sponsored by, for the Republicans out there wanting to be leaders and candidates to sponsor different holes. And it starts at 8 a.m. and there is a $10,000 award that will be given for someone that shoots the best hole, and there's $1 million year-end event also. So, all those who are golfers, get on out and have some fun. We'll have that Mountain Falls to ourselves Friday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, just a couple of things. Commissioner Jabbour, isn't Jim Butler Days starting soon?
It is the next 3 days. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to announce that at the end of the meeting, but thank you for the reminder. Yes, starting tomorrow night. Well, this evening is graduation for the high schoolers here in Tonopah, and starting tomorrow night will be the street dance with some live entertainment. Saturday morning there's breakfast at the Elks. The parade starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then I believe it's at 1 o'clock starts the mucking and mining tournament championships just to the right of the Elks. That goes on throughout the day, and then Sunday is the rodeo out at the fairgrounds.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
1 or 2 o'clock. It will be a lot of fun.
Are you going to do any mucking?
I will be here. I think that's what we do every day.
Yes, okay. And also, early voting starts, I believe, on the 28th. Yeah. So if all the candidates that want to, and people who want to meet the candidates can do that during that period of time, because most folks will have something out to talk about. Other than that, I don't have anything else to order. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to close that item. Any public comment on this item? Not seeing any. Nothing on the phone. Going to move to close public comment. Approval of the agenda.
Did you have something?
Oh,
Just an update to the Mark Kampf, KAMPF. Just an update to the Beatty Days, the Jim Butler Days announcement. The actually started on Sunday with the pageant, and your treasurer was a judge at the pageant.
I don't think you can win moving forward your candidacy because you had to choose just one. Good, good. That must have been tough.
Thank you for that. All right, moving to the approval of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. Please remove the following items from your agenda. On page number 1, item 5. Also items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So just that whole block, 8 through 12. And then on the next page, page number 2, item 13. So on page number 1, items 5, 8 through 12, and then on page number 2, item 13. And just to warn you, we are going to be jumping around a lot on the agenda today, so just be ready to flip.
Very good.
Yep. Fortunately, item number 6 is not going to be jumping around. That's our first item.
Item 6, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, discussion and deliberation regarding the monthly statement of county treasurer pursuant to NRS 354.280, including receipts, balances and funds, money on deposit, outstanding checks, and cash on hand.
Mark Kampf, County Treasurer. I wanted to just advise you that this report is not fully in compliance with the NRS requirements, but it is a work in progress, and I felt it's important to give you an update as to the fund balances that are there for January, February, March, and April, and also show the reconciliation format that I have in progress so that you can see how I plan on simplifying it and making it a more rational and easier to understand for not only the commissioners but the citizens who would be watching this.
So this is going to eliminate all those categories on that jumbo list that we get?
Yeah, we'll go through it and I'll show you the general concept. I have a meeting set up this afternoon with Jennifer Perry, a employee who retired but is also working on a part-time basis. You know, the finance team has been doing their best to help me get guidance and information as to how to use the Eden system, but they also have their demands, and so they've been so gracious as to set me up with Jennifer, who's going to help me understand some of the remaining questions I have to be able to put the puzzle together. Although I cannot start to work on the balances on the reconciliation between the beginning January fund and what's on the books as far as cash, I should be able to reconcile to the receipts and disbursements that are on the books for the current months. So that is my goal, is to reconcile that. And so the differences in that are unreconciled should be the same for beginning and the end of the month as I proceed forward to complete the reconciliation. And there's some other information I'd like to provide after I go through the basic report with regard to the tax sale, but we'll get into that after I'm done with the basic report. As you can see on your screen, what we have is the January report of the fund balances. And as we work down, you can see that at the beginning of the year, we had a fund balance in cash of $148.6 million and a ending balance of January of $158.9 million. The next page I'm going to show you is the draft of where we stand on the bank reconciliation. And as you can see, I'm working to simplify the presentation and to align the bank information with the way it actually appears in our books. For example, in the past, the Wells Fargo unrealized loss and interest was all put into the deposit column, and that now aligns with the way we record those transactions as either deposits or withdrawals in the Eden books. So I'm going to go through some of the basic items just to give you an idea of what you'll be seeing. Deposit account. When we receive cash, either from tax payments or from the state, sometimes it's deposited in the books in a different month than we actually record that. In the past, we've detailed each one of those deposits out in this reconciliation, and I found that rather confusing. So what we will have is supporting documentation behind this basic summary that anyone can have available to them in the future, so that you can see where we have differences is in when we receive deposits versus when they are actually recorded. As you can see, we have December deposits that are recorded in January, January deposits that were recorded in December, and likewise January deposits recorded in February, which create reconciling items. In the tax receiver account, there are checks that are paid that have never been recorded in Eden, as we may have discussed the last time. I'm still working on getting a full report of the details of the checks that have accumulated since the beginning of time when we went to Eden. The number is going to be significantly larger than that. I'm going to be working with the team here to establish a process for getting those recorded in Eden, and with our external auditor to get a better understanding of the correct method to make that recording in the system. In the payroll account, we have outstanding checks at the beginning of the month and the ending of the month. I'm going to be working on improving that number. I'm not convinced that's correct. And I also have what you can see as outstanding checks. There are still some older outstanding checks that have not been accounted for in that number, but getting an accurate report should be easier once I meet with Jennifer Perry today. One of the things that has always been a reconciling item is that we book our interest and market value adjustments in the month following the month where they are reflected by the bank. It's a pretty significant sort of entry that allocates all that to the various funds. And in this reconciliation, we show how that prior month interest and change in market values are recorded in the current month, different than they're in the bank. As you can see up on the top under bank account information, you can see in red under withdrawals, the Wells Fargo line, and that 1.6 million, in addition to the other credit items, are the market value that was recorded in January, but that is not booked until the following month of February. So that is an adjustment to what we have as disbursements in Eden. In addition, there were market value corrections that will be recorded in May. I missed the cutoff for closing in April, and these were items that were errors in the calculation that were performed previously in the way the market value adjustment was recorded. So you have in total $283,854.89 in market value corrections that will be recorded in May, and those will be negative adjustments. So those are losses, additional losses that will be recorded in May from the November and December timeframe due to a calculation error under the previous administration. So rather than trying to muddle up and plug numbers, I'm always going to be showing the difference that needs to be reconciled. I think those are going to be easily resolved through my discussion with Jennifer, because I have all the details of the transactions that make up the 25.3 million in deposits from the Eden accounts and the 15 million withdrawals. It's a matter of how those reconcile to the way the bank reflects those and the timing differences. But I believe my discussions with Jennifer will help me to resolve those and be able to give you a accurate reconciliation. So this is the kind of report you will be seeing in the future, a one-page report that gives you summary information with detail.
Chair.
Yes.
Okay, so what I'm seeing here is on your reconciliation and progress for January, on the first 2 pages, the report before this, it showed the balances at the bottom, the beginning balance and the ending balance is exactly to the blue, the baby blue on our page.
Yep.
The calculated book balance exactly matches. At 147 plus million was the beginning balance of that month, and the ending balance was 156 million and change. And so those are reflective in some, and just a little off, so.
Well, no, if you look at the trial balance totals. in
That's
green,
right, that's right. I did see it
That
was right.
exactly matches
That's
what
right.
the trial balance is.
I had meant to say that. So what I find is interesting is that's about a $10 million gain, beginning balance to end balance.
Yeah, that, it largely represents, there were a lot of tax receipts coming in during that period of time. And that reflects some of the year-end tax receipts that we get the following month after December. So, I believe you'll see as we go through some of these reports. I'm going to show you the different reports. I can give you the details. They're available here, so let's go back to those on February. In February, we just go to the balances. You can see the beginning balance is the ending balance from January. This will be the balances on the reconciliation. Again,
No gain in February.
no gain in February, and ending balance of around 58.4 million in February.
And a loss in March, ending fund balance-wise.
Let's just stick with this so that those watching in can see.
Don't do the full screen. Just scroll it here.
Okay,
It's bigger. Always.
all right.
We can see it here now, with the vision impaired up here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, more disbursements than receipts in that month. Again, keep in mind that that does not reflect the market value losses that will be recorded in May. In May, we will have an additional 7.3 million in market value losses through April that, again, they're recorded in the month following it. So that will include the February, March, and April losses that total 7.3 million. Of that 7.3 million, it includes the 283,000 of November and December adjustment. If you add to that the 1.5 million that was of market value loss in January, that brings us to a total unrealized market value loss of 8.8 million.
Once again, that's unrealized
Unrealized loss, that's correct.
loss. There's a difference.
Yeah, it's an
Do you wanna
unrealized
explain
loss.
the difference?
Again, that will, as we hold those securities to maturity, that will turn around, but that is reflective of the price and the interest rates in which they were purchased relative to the rising interest rates we have today.
So we hold our own, and we will not see losses of $8 million when they mature. And that's
As long
what
as
people
the
need to-
county continues to generate more tax revenues than it is spending in any given year, which is part of your budget process, we should not need to tap into those balances to be able to meet the needs of the expenditures of the various funds that are out there.
Thank you, sir.
That keeps it full.
Also, just as a update, there will be in year-to-date 536,000 of interest income that was earned on those investments, and of that, $405,862 will be booked in the month of May as a catch-up adjustment for February and March and the April 1-month time difference. And those will be reflected in the bank reconciliations for future months for February, March, and April, which are in process. I've done the majority of the work, just going back to this, on the deposit account, which takes a lot of manual effort to look up each individual deposit and determine which month it belongs in. It's not just something where you can just press the button and get an answer, needless to say. So I think we're going to be in much better shape as I get some instruction. I also had indicated that we have received funds from the trust sale, and this is not anything that is reflective of what the county will retain, a wire transfer of $1,645,004.70. I will not be allocating those funds until we've done a full due diligence on the accounts that were included in the tax sale. I had previously provided you with a affidavit of the mailings, which I plan on rescinding.
Okay, that's what I was just going to ask. So you're going to rescind that?
I'm going to rescind that affidavit. I received that on day 8 of my work here, and I have determined that there are a variety of situations where we did not do our due diligence and send the letters to all the addresses that were available. Some addresses that were available on the titles and in our DevNet system were not used for the mailing, because sometimes you have to send the letter to at least 5 different addresses to make sure that you get a response. And of those items that were returned as certified mail, undeliverable, none of those were followed up on adequately. And so I've got the team logging those all in, putting the documentation in the system so that it's available, so that if we are challenged in any way in the future, we have the documentation available. None of that had been scanned in and put into the system. So it's a tedious process that we're working through, but I'm trying my best to prevent issues with DTAX and the county and the taxpayers who may feel that their properties were sold in error. So I want to make sure that we do our best to protect the county from any future issues and get ahead of the problem rather than wait for the problem to come to us. I think it's the best approach and the best use of my time right now. I am meeting with DTAX this afternoon to get some additional guidance on the way forward on that. As you're aware, I'm sort of new to the NRS on this whole thing, and it's been a challenge for me to fully understand everything relative to it. And I thank my team for helping me have guidance, but with no transition process, it's been sort of an uphill battle that I'm working to achieve. So I don't think it's going to be a bad conversation. I think it's going to be a good conversation so that they know that we're fully working on this, and they're going to be seeing reports coming out of this commission meeting and future meetings that will make a lot more sense to them and will be fully reconciled rather than the kind of data that was presented in the past.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jabor.
Mr. Chair, thank you through you. Mr. Treasurer, thank you for that explanation. So for the record, are we safe to say, and I'm assuming that we've come to this point now with this the tax sale issue, as you refer to it, the tax sale issue, the employee responsible for that is no longer with the department, is that correct?
That's correct. They haven't been with us for about 3 weeks now, and their replacement will be starting on Tuesday of next week, and I think she's going to do an excellent job. We hired a deputy treasurer 1 to replace an individual who was promoted to a deputy treasurer 2 position that had been open and unfilled since October of last year. And that individual is doing an excellent job picking up the tasks and making it a lot easier for the deputy treasurer 2 to get our tax filings and payments to the state done on time. We only have one report that was past due. All the other filings have been done for the month of March. We're done on time in April, and we plan on having all of the reports done for the state done on time for the month of April. So they've done a great job in stepping up and figuring out the things that have been left behind, and really have done fantastic. I'm so proud of the team there.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, and of course, we appreciate everything that you've done and everything that your staff is doing now to catch the county back up to speed. But most importantly, we certainly appreciate the discovery of the tax sale issues now versus later. Thank you.
All right, and some of them we've already worked through some of them and returned properties to people that should not have had their properties taken away. So we're working on that. But again, anyone who was in the tax sale, no properties are going to be returned to them until they pay their taxes that are past due. So, that's the key, is to make sure that the county gets the funds that are due to them for any of these delinquent properties. And the priority of our new Deputy Treasurer Trust Properties will be to meet the deadline of June 6th for the third-year delinquencies, to return those properties from their ownership to the Treasurer's Trust, so that then they can be identified for future tax sales and communicated to those individuals that their properties are now subject to tax sale in the future.
Commissioner Blundo?
Thank you, Treasurer. Excellent report. I'm glad the ship is getting righted, and you're doing a phenomenal job. You had made a comment earlier. Do we have an estimate of what do we have in our rainy day fund?
If you're talking about the stabilization fund within the accounting funding structure, that fund has a couple $100,000 in it. I'm actually going to talk about it during the budget item.
Okay.
But in the general fund, we have a committed ending fund balance of $5.8 million. So that could be the answer you're looking for, Commissioner Blundo?
There's a fund we can establish. It's an NRS where we cannot have more than like 10%.
Yeah, that's the stabilization
Right.
fund.
So we're not at the 10% in there.
No.
Okay. I just wanted to put a couple of those comments on the record.
Good input.
And what I heard from the treasurer is, live within your means, spend, don't be conservative, don't spend what you don't have. So we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
I think based on what I'm seeing is that the county generally generates tax revenues that meets its budget, and that the fund balances are secured by investments, and that as time goes on, those losses will turn around. I do have, cash that has not been invested, but with the recent announcements by the Fed of the increase in interest rates, I think it would be premature to invest those funds until the interest rates begin to stabilize, and then invest those funds at a higher interest rate than some that were invested at, in 2020 at a 0.5% interest that we're living with today at a higher rate of interest. I do plan on giving a fuller analysis in a month of the position in our investments and the timing of when those investments were made, so that you'll get an idea of when those will turn around, and then you can anticipate those that you could access effectively should there be a significant drop-off in tax revenues. But I would anticipate that with the rise in fuel prices and consumer prices, sales tax revenues will be increasing over time. That will not necessarily affect property taxes that come in, but with the increase in fuel prices, the sad part is that it's offsetting budgets, because now we have significant costs associated with fuel and the purchase of materials that will be offset by those tax revenues that are increased in general.
We'll see that when we talk about our budgets too, because there's, everything's relevant, right?
That's right.
And since it's sticking out right on the front page, page 2 of the backup, it says 10241, the Victim Restitution Fund. We had a situation where a tremendous amount of money was stolen from the juvenile probation. Do we know whatever happened with that? I know some funds got recovered, however, not all of it. Did we put in a claim for the difference? I mean, that was a serious situation, because it was restitution. right? That is owed to the people that's supposed to make it whole. So I don't know if that ever made it there.
I don't have an update at this time, Commissioner Blendo, but we can certainly look into it with regards to that particular case. It may still be open and active, I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
No, again, Treasurer, you did a good job, and we appreciate that you're doing this, knowing that you're doing two things, and we appreciate your sacrifice that you're making. Thank you.
I'm willing to do it, thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on,
Public comment.
and we're going to open public comment. Except for,
No. No.
come on up.
Please, come on up.
Come on up.
We're giving you a bad time. No, we want to hear what you got to say. Come on.
This is public comment for item 6.
Yes.
Yep.
I love how they give me a hard time. Tim Bohannon, Bohannon. I'd like us all to pay attention to the work that Mark Kampf has done on this, in the details, in the thoroughness, and the accuracy that he's going to. This is extremely important for all of us. Everyone here, everyone in Tonopah and Ragosa, Beatty, throughout Nye County, this is very mission critical. And yes, it's taken a little bit of time to get there, but it's definitely in the right direction. I'd like to challenge us today, as we look at the budgets and everything else, a general type comment, that department heads and those responsible for the dollars of their budget know not only that, but also know what your balance should be. And that will help on research items and follow-up if there's questions that the treasurer may have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Any public comment on the phone?
No, Chair.
I'm going to close public comment. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 32.
Item 32 for possible action, presentation, discussion, and direction to staff regarding Nye County Pool Pact policy costs and cost-sharing rate for fiscal year 2023 for all funds legally available to contribute towards the Nye County risk management policy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I did want to give the board and the public an update with regards to where we're at with our insurance policy. Currently, our insurance policy is with Pool Pact. That is a pooled insurance policy with other counties of similar size within the state of Nevada. We did receive our fiscal 23 policy renewal, and it is 73% of an increase from last year, going from 1.26 million to 2.041 million. And that's just the insurance policy cost itself. The deductibles are going from $25,000, which is the current deductible level now, to $50,000. So that is a substantial increase. Nye County is the primary responsible party for the claims experience that we are experiencing, driving that cost rate up. So what we've built into the budgets is for the other agencies that cost share, such as Beatty, Gabbs, Manhattan, etc. We left their cost share percentage at the same rate of 2.75% of revenues. And for the Nye County funds that can cost share, we had to increase that to 4.75% of all revenues. This is assuming worst case that we go with the Pool Pact policy and we see worst case claims experience in fiscal 23. That said, our insurance broker is soliciting quotes from other vendors at this point in time, and we'll have something to present to the board to see if we can chip away at that cost and reduce it. So we're planning for the worst, hoping for the best. And how this impacts primarily the Nye County General Fund is it's a large expense. It's multiple millions of dollars out of the general fund itself, and we'll talk about that when we go through the budget items themselves. But what can happen if we do get that cost down is that impact to the general fund will be reduced, and then that funding can be used elsewhere, or it can be reserved for ending fund balance. So a lot's been going on with our insurance policy, and we tried to plan for all of the contingencies associated with this one change of many changes that have occurred over the last couple of months. But I did want to give the board that update on how we planned for this in the budget cycle for Nye County and other agencies.
And we've all seen, all, the commissioners are all been briefed.
Yes,
So they know where the issues are in regards to why the insurance is going up the way it is.
yes.
Okay, so hopefully we can work with those, mainly one organization that we need to work with
Yes.
firmly.
Yes.
Everyone needs to know, just like you stated, we were briefed in detail by the insurance provider. Jabor and I were just briefed this morning, and in our discussion, so the rest of the commissioners will know, I asked a simple question. One of our big costs for driving this up was our insurance claim for the flood. We really hit that pull pack hard. We hit them for $1.88 million combined between the town of Pahrump and Nye County. And in discussions, we had been informed that we can put in for a FEMA claim if we got to $2 million. But there were things that they were not going to allow. For instance, they were not going to allow us to claim our building, so we'd have to break that out. But in the discussion, it was brought up that the school's $2 million claim had not been considered, and we're going to research whether or not we can combine Nye County as a whole and then go to FEMA and say, we want that $2 million back to us. So you guys just need to know we're working on everything we can think of to try and recoup the costs that we endured with the flood. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Blendo?
I believe that's a phenomenal secondary look at how to make that magic happen. It's an unfortunate situation where we're having a 73% increase in insurance, and just for the general public, you just can't shop it around like, hey, State Farm, you go to Geico, you can't bounce it around. Allstate, there's no free quotes here. It just doesn't work that way. It's a completely different, very specialized insurance, and obviously a very broad insurance. We cover a lot of different things. However, one of the contributing factors outside of the flood, which, hey, that's an act of nature. That's exactly why you have the insurance. And unfortunately, I'm going to say this, is the Sheriff's Department, and we have a lot of litigation and lawsuits and payouts due to the Sheriff's Office. So it's a very specific department that is contributing a significant amount and is affecting the insurance rates. So we need to take a real hard look at this situation.
One more go at it, if I may, Chair. In that discussion, we also discussed, well, how could we mitigate that impacted future flooding? Because, of course, most of our facilities exist within the flood zone, and the 100-year flood zone. And I asked what if we were to do what we'd really love to do here at the county, and that's capture the water before it ever came down from the mountain. So detain it before it got to us, and also remove everyone else out of the FEMA flood zone that's paying insurance on their homes in excess of $500 annually. And in that discussion, he said it wouldn't mitigate our costs because that's not where we're really realizing the costs for our insurance policy premium. But we are hard looking at that too, so the public knows what Public Works been working on it for years. So it's a big deal. So it's a lot of money, but we continue to look. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Cox?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jabor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. It was a very interesting meeting and briefing. And Commissioner Blundo did bring up the Sheriff's Office with liability, et cetera. They're not the only ones, but they are the highest ranking. But please note that the request was made that a comprehensive report to be forthcoming for all of us to review. And this way we can try to have the meeting of the minds and put something together to correct any bad behavior, any mishaps, incidents, accidents. That's why we have insurance, absolutely. But there is training that needs to be incurred, and that'll help streamline our liability.
Very well stated.
Thank you, Commissioner. And
Yeah,
that was
thank
the
you.
reason why I didn't say the name of the specific, but we have one specific organization we have a lot of work with. That, I thank you, Commissioners. Any public comment on this item? Not hearing any, not seeing any? Someone
Yes,
on the
Chair.
phone?
Yes. The caller is unmuted. Please speak and spell your name for the record.
Yes, hi, Tim Bohannon, Bohannon. Something that Commissioner Strickland mentioned is that it's very important that we deal with the problem of the water during floods before it happens, i.e. retention basins and things of that nature. That's definitely something I would like to see us get to, hopefully in my lifetime and hopefully much before that, here in the Pahrump Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any other public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Not on the phone?
No, Chair.
Okay. So, are you going to be public comment, Commissioner Jabbar?
I just was a little taken back a little. I know Mr. Bohannon was in the audience, and then he's on the phone. He probably knew that we wouldn't be able to cut him off, but I believe he had to go home and change his sneakers.
Well, thank you for that. I'm going to close public comment. Thank you. Item number 3, we're going to go to item 23.
Item 23 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to amend the Nye County Plan for the provision of indigent defense services.
I'm sorry, gentlemen and ladies. I am going to be jumping around quite a bit. This is so we can get certain things done in a group. So we're hearing from Lorena on this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm here. I have a couple of amendments that need to be made, I'm requesting to be made to our plan for the provision of indigent defense services. And one of the changes is based on legislative changes that happened last session. And if you look on the top page, number 6,
Yes. I see that change.
Section E, Section 2, and changing one word from may to shall. And that's our 48-hour screening in order to hold the hearings, and that's a mandate now.
Yes, it's.
And
yeah.
then,
I seen that. I was going to bring that up if it didn't get brought up, but yes. That's good.
okay. And then also on the top page, number 11, I'm requesting to increase the contract amount from $150,000 to $175,000. And this is, the contracts have not been increased since 2012-13. And there has been an increase in caseload, increase in workload due to legislative changes that our public defenders have not been allowed to keep up with the requirements of the State Department of Indigent Defense Services with reporting. So this will allow them to get that administrative help they need. This will be through their own public defender office, not the county. So I'm requesting an increase to their contract. I do understand that Savannah has built the increases into our other judicial budget, and so that this cost can be absorbed in the budget.
Are those the only two changes, Lorena?
Yes.
Chair,
Commissioner.
I'll make a motion to amend the Nye County Plan for the provision of indigent services, making the change from shall to may on page 6 of the backup, under eligibility of appointed representation, number 2, and on page 11 of the backup where it says C, compensated of court-appointed counsel from 150,000 to reflect 100. What was the total? 175? 175,000.
Second.
Jabor seconds.
I have a motion and 2 seconds. That's great. Means everybody's happy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. May I clarify that the first amendment was from may to shall?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry? Okay, just to be, may to shall. That's what it says.
That's what it says.
You said shall and may.
Okay, let the record clearly reflect. It says may, we're crossing that out and we're replacing may with shall.
Now, just so everybody knows.
And the 150 will be reflective of 175,000. And that, Savannah, if you don't mind putting on the record that we have the funds to do that.
That is correct.
Thank you.
And so if I may be amending my second, I'm not sure, but if so, I
I think
did.
so, I was just clarifying it.
Just clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, any public comment on this item? On the phone?
No, Chair.
Close public comment. Call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Jabor's aye.
Carboni's aye. It's 5-0. Thank you very much. Move on
Thank
to
you.
number four. Number four of the new agenda is number 31.
Item 31 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to determine if sufficient financial resources are available to increase the compensation of justices of the peace pursuant to NRS 4.040 for fiscal year 2022 through 2023.
Savannah,
Yes, Commissioner Blendo?
is there sufficient funds and financial resources available to increase the JOPs?
Yes, there are.
Okay.
My big concern is I don't see them here. Are they on the phone?
If they are, they've not raised their hands to speak.
Would be nice for somebody that wants any funds or the budget change, would be nice to be here to give us some input. And unless you're going to vouch for them,
I actually, Chair, I will step up for both of the JPs. I know they have a tremendous caseload. They absolutely see, they have the kind of caseload that you would see out of Las Vegas. So I will support this and say I will determine that there is sufficient financial resources available to increase the compensation of the Justice of the Peace pursuant to NRS 4.040 for the fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any more comment from the board?
I agree with you. If, people were looking for funds, they should be here. However, I've spoken to them in detail.
Commissioner Jabor?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not to be their attorneys, but with their caseload as expressed, today's Thursday, and I'm certain that they're both in court, or all three are in court today. So thank you.
I agree that I agree they need the funds. I know there's another item on here that's going to be also for the JP, so they're going to be requesting some more folks.
Can we-
That's going to be important, so.
Can we try to make sure that they're on the line or a representative, somebody?
There's nobody online.
Nobody? Okay.
All right, I have a motion and a second,
Got it.
and I'm going to ask for public comment. Any public comment?
No.
Nobody on the phone? Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
So I'm going to call for the question.
Aye.
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 Jabor's aye.
5-0, thank you. Carboni's aye. Item number 33.
Item 33 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to 1, review previous priorities set by the Board of County Commissioners for fiscal year 2023 departments' requests, and 2, select final positions and/or services and supplies to be included in the fiscal year 2023 budget.
Commissioners, included in your backup is the documentation that was generated as a result of our original budget workshop on the 20th of April. And if you look at the last page, that is the general fund request priority listing. The first column identifies the priority, the second column is the department, third column is request, fourth column is total request, fifth column is the percentage approved, sixth column is the total impact to the general fund. We have built these approvals into the second and third model that will be presented to you in the next agenda item. And this item was brought forward to see if the board wanted to discuss any of these positions further, or we can simply move forward with the list as presented and move forward with the budget model presentations.
I like the list I think we did really good work that day. I like the list.
I agree with you, I think, from the board standpoint or from our standpoint.
Okay.
I know my standpoint, we did a pretty damn good job of hacking away at this thing.
Yeah, I think we made the best use of time that day, and we heard all the departments. So.
Liz did a good job of
Keeping up.
keeping up with us, so that was. unusual for everybody, but they did. Thank you. So,
And that's reflective of the town of Pahrump as well.
commissioners, do we want to do something here?
Do we need a motion to keep it the way it is, or?
Well, we didn't take any formal action to approve the listing.
Take action this time.
We can take action this time, correct?
So with that, I mean, we can,
Chair, I'll make a motion to finalize the priorities, the previous priorities set by the Board of County Commissioners for fiscal year '23 department request.
Second.
a motion and I have a second. Any public comment? You have something you wanted to say? Any public comment?
No, Chair.
Public comment on the phone? Thank you, Sam. I'll close public comment. Commissioners, call for the question.
Aye.
Londo's aye.
Aye.
Jabor's aye.
Bonnie's aye, it's 5-0. Thank you. So, that changes things. So, do you want to go back?
Yep.
To the agenda item.
So, request to reopen item number 4, approval of the agenda.
Okay.
And with the action that the board has just taken, we can strike some more items, which were just kept on here in case you wanted to revisit them. And those items are item number 22,
Okay, 22.
item number 24,
Let us catch up.
24.
Next one?
item 22, item 24, item 25,
25.
item 26, item 28, item 29, and item 30.
And 30.
Does that take care of all of them?
There are additional on the next page.
Isn't planning and public works part of that?
Okay. Item 35, 36, and items 37, 38, and 39.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Now, that was worth it.
Okay.
Chair, can we take a 5-minute break? Comfort?
Can we do that?
Restroom.
Let's take a 5-minute break. Commissioner
was that all the
Jabor?
items out of there? That's all.
Hey, Commissioner Jabor, that wasn't
Commissioner
called by
Jabor's happy.
you.
Thank you. No, it wasn't. Not this time. Not this time.
We got other, Savannah, when you get back, we need to relook at this agenda. Well, go do what you need to go do, and
We approved 1 through 10.
Chipmunk on? Good. I had a nice chat with your husband yesterday. It was. It was. He's always good to us.
We have a quorum. So I have a request to open up item number 33.
Item 33 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to 1, review previous priorities set by the Board of County Commissioners for fiscal year 2023 departments' requests, and 2, select final positions and/or services and supplies to be included in the fiscal year 2023 budget.
So what is the questions?
Chair, I wanted to clarify. So after the item was heard, a department head came up and asked, well, why was my position not funded? I see a number here, but I don't see a percentage. And so for the general fund specifically, on the BOCC priority listing, I asked the board to prioritize more than we had funding for in the event that I could rationalize property taxes being better than they were projected through the Department of Taxation's reporting.
Because at the time when we did the we had nothing to
Right.
look at, so we estimated.
We estimated that we had 750,000 to work with, and the board had approved $748,887 worth of positions in the first 10 positions on that priority listing. The additional positions that were prioritized was just in case if that number was in excess of what we expected, and unfortunately, it's not. So we can go through that in the next agenda items, but the 10 positions that are 100% funded on the schedule are what is built into 2 of the models that will be presented to the board.
So, Chair, real brief, I just want to make these comments that it's not that anybody got skipped over or anything. It's about a funding issue, and I'm very disappointed that we don't have the additional funds. I thought we did a very conservative model here, and I figured we would have absolutely had more. So it really raises the questions as what's going on with the state, and I think in the future, I think we'll probably realize those funds, and as those funds come through, you have a priority list, and we should be able to do that. I will make this other comment, that if any of these departments have a little extra wiggle room in their services and supplies budget, they want to help contribute, I think in the first quarter of the next year, or within the next couple of months, we can always reevaluate and see where we're at, and prioritize and take action towards things, so. I think that's positive.
Makes sense.
Yes.
If they have the ability to do that, that makes sense. So it looks like you two are off doing,
Working.
good conversation. It's great. Good to hear. Thank God there was no third commissioner around. So, any other comments you want to make there? Because I see somebody else standing there, so. It's
Can you give me just 1 second?
go ahead.
Morning. Brett Wagner, Director of Planning. I, for one, am a bit disappointed. I think the way I understand the priority list and all that was discussed. I thought that departments were going to have an opportunity to discuss it a little further, because I, for one, think when my item was up there last time, the discussion had nothing to do with what we were truly asking for. It was more about shirts and uniforms and whether or not people wear badges, which had nothing to do with the justification for that position. So I don't feel that my department's position was really looked at as to what was being presented, which I tried to follow up with the commissioners with an email and bring that to your attention. There was some backup that wasn't included for whatever the reason when it was before you guys on that past meeting, which is now there today, where I put a lot of work into the justification for that position. If it was determined off the facts, then I completely agree with you. I get this as a hard decision for you guys to make, but I don't feel that my particular position was really given the look it should have, because A, you didn't have the backup, and secondly, the discussion had nothing to do with the need of the position. It was about buying 3 shirts at a bill of $120, which would come out of the planning budget. When the position justification asks for any kind of materials or computers or whatever the case may be that's going to have to be purchased for this additional position, maybe I'm naive. I thought full disclosure was appropriate. So that's why I put that in there. And it became the topic of conversation. Not the need for the position, not what this position would be doing, but what they're going to be wearing and who should buy it. So I just wanted to put that on the record,
That's fine. We appreciate that.
since I didn't get an opportunity with my item that was on the agenda. Because it got canceled, right? The item got pulled.
Yes. Well, it got pulled because it was part of the process, was in the matrix, so that's why it was pulled.
Okay, thank you.
But he was hurt. approved yet.
Okay. Any other questions? I got, any other public comment? I'm gonna close public comment.
There's no comment on the phone, Chair.
Do we need to do any further?
Any other comments?
We're done.
Other than, I see that, of course, department heads are very passionate. They want to have staff, imagine that. We want to be able to do the job. And this is the tough part about it being a commissioner. It's always the money part that's tough.
Well, there's also another time for us to be, we'll be looking at this thing in another
Again and
couple
again.
months, so, I mean,
Exactly. We got to see the real money start coming in, and that's where we're at.
As time, and I mean, some of these folks already know that there's a lot of homes going in, a lot of construction going on, so that's gonna change things too. So,
Right.
again, everything has its place. Eventually, things will change. Sometimes some people will get, some people won't. But again, Commissioner Blundo's comment still fits. If we have additional funds that we're not gonna use, or in this case here, budget, that we need to be able to turn it back to other areas so we can use that. So with that, I'm gonna move on to item number 34.
Item 34 for possible action, presentation, discussion, and deliberation to review and approve the Nye County final budget assumptions for fiscal year 2022 through 2023.
Chair, I do have a presentation that we are going to be displaying on the screen, and I would like to make this available for the board to write notes on. The presentation is 22 slides. Can we accept this as additional backup so we can hand out copies?
Motion to approve. Additional backup.
Second. Just so you didn't have to reach. Any public comment? Not seeing any. I don't know if there's any on the phone. Sorry. Or
Aye.
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 We will make copies.
So do you need 5?
We need a few minutes to make some copies.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Could you tell me who seconded that motion, please?
Mr. Carboni did.
Sure, did.
Thank you, thank you.
Judge Wonker? Hello? Your Honor?
As soon as we get the rest of the folks back, we'll do your items. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jabor, did you get your copy yet?
I'm all set, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. So, do we want to jump to item 27? Is that what everybody's asking?
You have the item still open for which we were waiting for the backup. It's up to you. And we have the backup now, so we can continue with that or take item 27.
So let's take care of this thing, and then we'll go ahead and take care of the judge. Okay, thanks. So we're back on item number 34. We have our presentation documentation. You're up, young lady.
Janie, if you would share the screen, Liz has the presentation for the public. Okay, we're here again, guys. Nye County budget forecast for fiscal year 2022-2023, and that is presented today. So it's taken a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to this point. I'm not super happy with the reporting that's been provided to generate the budget from, and we'll talk about some of those issues. This is across the board. It's not just Nye County that's experiencing this issue. It's all the other agencies within the county as well, possibly statewide. We're not sure where the problem exists, where it comes from. I'm wondering if it's possible that we have a reporting issue with DevNet, which is our property tax management system. Not sure. So we're still working on it. And like we discussed in a prior item, if revenues do come to fruition in excess of budget, then we can take action on that. So we will go through these slides, and I'll talk you through the methodology that we use to build the budget, and hopefully the next couple of items will be relatively easy. So next slide, Liz. All right, so some of the issues that we ran into when generating the fiscal 23 budget, local issues, were the property tax and net proceed values provided by the Department of Taxation are not in line with forecasts. And like I mentioned, this impacted all agencies. In conjunction with that, with a turnover in the treasurer's office, we've seen delayed revenue postings. And where that generates an issue is I trend the revenue posting data by revenue source, and I use that to forecast out the remaining portion of the fiscal year so we can determine ending fund balance, and also how to compare that to a future year and kind of do an assessment overall of the overall health of the county. When we don't have revenue postings that follow suit with our forecast, it tells me there's something wrong. And it's not the current administration's fault, it's just turnover in that office has created this issue and created this additional challenge. It could impact ending fund balance. So we do have an ending fund balance presented for the general fund. It could be higher or lower depending upon the revenues that are actually received and posted. And I do know that Treasurer Kampf is working very hard with his team to stay on top of things, but they do have multiple vacancies, and similar to my department, everyone's relatively new in that department, compounding this issue. As Treasurer Kampf mentioned during his treasurer's item, we are seeing investment losses in fiscal 22 that are extensive. Now they are unrealized, which means that those tables will turn eventually, but GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, requires us to record those losses, and that does impact the fund balance that we have in all of our funds. So that is a critical matter, and how we budgeted our investment income and market allocation in fiscal 23 was very conservative because of these facts. Also, another issue we ran into is, and we discussed this on a prior item, is risk management costs increased by 73% for our existing, the existing insurance provider that we have. Granted, we are looking into alternatives, but that is extremely painful for the county to absorb. In addition to that, we did see health insurance costs increase 6%. It's better than it could have been. 6% is definitely better than we have seen in past years, but it's not easy to absorb either. It's a significant impact to the county. Next slide, please. So global and national budgetary issues that we're seeing is supply chain issues are delaying all of our projects. It's driving the costs up on all of our projects, and it's also impacting our operational items, our everyday needs. We are experiencing historic inflation levels. In calendar year 2021, CPI was 7.1%, and we are on track to see a similar level CPI. Thank you, Jessica. We are expecting to see a similar level of CPI in calendar 22, which just continues to inflate the costs associated with doing business. We are seeing historical increases in interest levels in calendar 2022, the first quarter of calendar 2022. We're seeing those interest rates jump dramatically, and that's going to have an impact across the board. While we haven't seen a slowdown in building yet, and we may not, definitely interest rates are going to reduce the size of homes that people can build here or commercial space that people can build here. And then also we have a potential recession on the horizon. And you can look and find news articles that will tell you there's not, and news articles that tell you that there is expected to be a recession. So similar to when COVID happened, not really sure if that's going to have an impact to us, or if it will or if it won't. But either way, the board is apprised on a monthly basis how our revenues look and how our expenditures look. So we do take action when necessary. Like we did through COVID, we will handle this in a similar manner. Take action if we need to, freeze positions, freeze unnecessary services and supply budgets and things like that if we do see a recession. Next slide. So these next couple of slides, I talk about our budget revenue assumptions. So this graph here, the blue line is our property tax assessed valuation, and the green line is our net proceeds assessed valuation. And you can see that our property tax is actually lower than it was in the prior year. So we have $2.088 million for fiscal 22 property tax assessed value, and in fiscal 23, $2.087 million. And so that is a strange number to me. This is the valuation that came from the Department of Taxation by way of the reporting generated from the Assessor's Office and the Treasurer's Office. So this is the reason why I did not have data for you last month, and why the presentation was not delivered until just this morning. Is I've been trying to figure out how to rationalize this and quantify a reduction of assessed valuation when it's not clear to me that that is the case here. In addition to that, net proceeds in fiscal...
Can you guys wrap your mind around this? Okay, for a year, we've had how many homes built and how many new businesses move into this community, and yet we've taken in less property tax than we did the year before, according to Department of Taxation. And you wonder why Savannah's like, well, I guess I'm going to wait till the last minute. Maybe I'll think of something.
It's
terrible.
Very concerning.
That was a concern we had when we started going through this.
That's why we have been conservative.
Right.
That's it. That's right.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't seem right. We know that.
Right.
But the point is we don't have anybody to point our finger at to say they screwed up. So.
Right. Or even how to quantify that loss, right? It's really hard to try and track down where
Is
the
it possible? Was there much of a differentiation between the year before and last year that may have, they spiked and it wasn't justifiable? We really didn't have that much property tax come in?
So I do know that Solar Reserve and Tonopah filed bankruptcy. It was a reorganization bankruptcy, and they asked to be assessed for their taxable value. So that did have an impact. But that said, the permits that have been issued through April of this fiscal year, the assessed valuation is $181 million, which is an increase of 214% from the prior year. In fiscal 21, we had $84.6 million actually, of permits issued, and that was the assessed valuation, was $84.6 million, which was a growth of 171.83% from the prior year.
Right.
So we're
percent.
So we're seeing huge growth in our assessed valuation on the permitting side. And granted, some of these projects may not come to fruition, but the majority of them are. We're seeing that on the ground every day. You take a drive through town and you're seeing the growth.
There again, you're going to go back to the supply chain.
Right.
They have been slowed down.
Right,
These projects have been drastically slowed down.
right, exactly. So
Interesting. Thank you.
very challenging to try and estimate where we're going to be.
The realization may not be this year.
Maybe not, but the trends for the number of permits issued, the assessed valuation, dating back to 2014, 2015 has been all uphill. We are growing as a community, and not just in Pahrump. We're growing up north as well. So it's hard for me to wrap my mind around this as well. That said, not only is that a complication, but the green line is our net proceeds on mining materials. So we went from having net proceeds of 200 and assessed valuation for net proceeds of 223 million down to 25 million. And I had
Something wrong there because we didn't close that many mines.
right.
Or did we close any?
So
No.
I understand this information is provided by the mining companies to the Department of Taxation. So I've had several phone calls with DTax to try and figure this out as well. The positive that we have for net proceeds is we don't use net proceeds for operations. We move it out into the capital fund, and that gives us the ability to execute capital projects when we either build up enough funding that we can take care of a project, and that's a smart move, to be honest, because the revenue source is so volatile. With the way the economy looks right now, people could go back to buying gold and driving gold prices up, and this might not be what we actually see. So, again, we've racked our brains trying to figure out how to handle this situation over the last couple of months, and
Sir, out of D-tax.
well, it's reasonable, is the assessed valuation. There was, looking between the different reports that they receive, and I'll be honest, I don't know everything that they receive, and I don't know exactly how they process their information, but their reports looked reasonable. And so there were no flags raised on their end, and that was the response that was provided.
At our NACO meeting, Nevada Association of Counties, it was very well heard that we are just one of many counties that are going through this. This is not unique. DTax is not giving anybody what they need.
And we didn't see any legislation that changed percentage ratios.
No.
We didn't see any percentage ratios in any legislation changing for for these calculations either, so.
No.
It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. So knowing
Mr.
these.
Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Commissioner DeBoer.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everybody. Through you, Comptroller Savannah, I have a question here, please. If DTax has seen this particular page, for example, and your explanation in defense of Nye County that this just doesn't make sense, is it possible that they could do a recalculation?
It is possible. And what I'm presenting today is actually a couple of options, and one of which is that we go with our historical data instead of the data that they are providing. And we could, take this one step further after this meeting today and ask for a reevaluation. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm satisfied as long as you've got that in motion and that's part of your plan. So thank you.
Chair.
Commissioner Wendell, go ahead.
Yeah, so Savannah, I'm watching you give this presentation, and I see the body language. I see the concern. I hear you. Okay, it's not the words you're using, but I see the concern, and something just isn't adding up here. So if the only 2 cents I add to this is I think we take the conservative approach. We look at the numbers. Let's work with what we have, and I think we've been really good about reevaluating things midstream or after a quarter. We do it on a monthly basis. We have the reporting that you provide us. So I think we just keep doing the level-handed approach and just take it one day, one step, one review at a time. And that's great that we have options to say, hey, let's do a reevaluation here, something doesn't add up. But I'm very happy that, I'm thankful that you're looking at all these things and you're just like, something just isn't adding up here.
Sure.
So that's all very good.
Thank you, Commissioner. The only thing we want to do is we don't want to make it look like, we accepted what they believe they've given us.
Sure. Yep, I can certainly understand that, and I think I have built in a couple of options that the board can agree to. Any other questions? Yes, they are in the presentation, sir. Any other questions on this slide before we move on? Okay. So fiscal 23 general fund budget revenue assumptions for consolidated tax. Consolidated tax is our sales tax. It's one of our largest revenue sources generated by the county. So D-Tax does provide us with that value. I did look at historical trends. It does make sense. So the number that they've given us of the $21.771 million, we've budgeted 100% of that. This did not throw up any red flags. This number looked good. We talked about property tax and net proceeds. So for the general fund, D-Tax is projecting property tax totals $17.4 million. And so that's with their assessed valuation, and this is just the general fund. So I do have a couple of options with which we're going to go through with regards to that particular number. And then D-Tax's projections for net proceeds total $265,000. That is 10% of what this year's net proceeds budget is. So I also have multiple models for that as well. I did want to let the board know in the general fund, $17.461 million is only 1.34% of growth from the prior year's projection provided by D-Tax. And that doesn't even meet the 3% maximum taxation allowable on a private residence. So it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, my tax goes up, so.
Yeah.
Right. And net proceeds this year was fiscal 22 is 2.34 million. So that much of a drop definitely is concerning, like we mentioned. Next slide, please. So additional revenue sources that the county receives is PILT, which is payment in lieu of taxes. The federal government provides us a nominal tax payment on the 97% of the acreage that they own in Nye County. But that said,
Excuse me, manage.
Manage, excuse me.
Thank you.
Apologize. So past fiscal year revenue ranged between 2.8 million and 3.5 million, and that was before we exceeded the 50,000 population cap, and that is the max cap with which the PILT calculation operates. So it's our expectation that we'll see a $3.7 million payment in fiscal 23 for PILT. It may be more than that, but I do want to take a conservative approach considering there are, depending upon when the population factor comes in, et cetera. So 3.7 million for fiscal 23 is a conservative approach.
It really is, because once we hit that threshold, our tax base per acre went up. And so conservative you are. I'm anxious to see what we get.
Yeah, and I did look at comparable counties with similar acreage to come up with the conservative value. I'd rather have this be understated than overstated, knowing that, the feds can change their mind. But at this point, we're expecting full funding.
It's better to stay underneath the fence.
Yes, absolutely. And we have other revenue sources in the general fund that we're budgeting for, and we do keep that historical growth trend that we apply to all of these different revenue sources. That includes licensing and permits, charges for services, fines, and other revenue types. So these are the factors known and also modeled for the board to consider with regards to revenue. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, so for expenditures on the salaries and benefit budget details, so we run a process called position budgeting, and it calculates and forecasts pay for all existing positions, whether they are filled or vacant, for the upcoming fiscal year. Position budgeting applies step increases, longevity, shift differential, Anything that's bargained for collectively within each of the agreements, and any of the other contractual obligations pursuant to those contracts. So we build all of that into the all of the models. We also have built in the 6% medical benefit cost increase that we talked about, and the cost of living increases pursuant to the collective bargaining agreements and statutes, including the JP approval that was just made. That was already built into the budget. And then we also, we did not modify workers' compensation insurance rates. We are self-insured for workers' compensation, and the first year was successful. So we did not have the need to increase rates to charge ourselves at this point in time, but it is something that my team and I look at regularly to make sure we're not overcharging or undercharging ourselves. And lastly, for for salaries and benefits, we did not budget for overtime. Overtime is generally incurred in a typical department for, if there's a special project or a special need or a callback of some sort. The sheriff's office is a 24-hour operation, and they do generate overtime associated with annual leave, sick leave, or emergencies, and we can assess that as we move through the year. But with the collective bargaining negotiations that were completed in fiscal 22 for the NCLEA, NCSA, which is both of the law enforcement groups that are non-salary, we have done a market adjustment to get their pay closer to where it should be for the county that we're in. And the goal is to promote longevity and to avoid turnover, which also creates overtime. When there's turnover and vacancies, there is the need for overtime to cover shifts. So we will continue to assess the overtime and comp time within the sheriff's office as we move through the year to see if position vacancy savings cannot offset it, and that'll be something we bring forward to the board on a monthly basis. Next slide, please. So the services and supply budgets for all departments in the general fund have been adjusted based on the BOCC approved service and supply calculation. So what we've done is we've utilized a smooth average of actual services and supply expenditures to calculate our fixed costs and fluctuating costs based on employee headcount and contractual budgets based on active contracts and new agreements added in the fiscal year. We have also applied a consumer price index increase of 7.1% on the non-overhead related services and supply items. So the non-fixed costs, which for example is fuel, operating expenses, and travel. We all know it's far more painful to fill up at the pump right now than it has been in recent years, and our departments are feeling that. So in order to ensure they can continue providing the public services, we need to make sure that they have those budget line items increased. We discussed risk management. The costs are expected to increase, worst case, 73% in this upcoming fiscal year. And so we did add that to the Nye County General Fund, going from 2.75% of revenues to 4.75% of revenues, and that general fund impact was about $1 million, unfortunately.
I thought it was closer to 800,000.
Well, we do need to add in the deductible going from $25,000 to $50,000. We needed a little more wiggle room in there to make sure that we weren't short funded, but we can assess as the year goes on, and depending upon what happens with our risk management policy, we may be able to reduce that budget line item and reallocate elsewhere. All right, so any questions on services and supplies? I know I ran through that kind of quickly, but essentially it's no change with the exception of the approvals the board made at CPI and new contracts. Okay, great. Next slide, please.
Agreed with it, that's where we are.
So we do have several transfers that move funding out of the general fund for various reasons, and those have been built into the budget. So we have an operating transfer out into the stabilization fund. That was the fund Commissioner Blendo had asked about during a prior item. The stabilization fund can be used for things like flood, fire, pandemic. Now the legislation was changed to include pandemic. So it's good to have that safety net in the event that something comes up, especially if there is a recession. If we're mid-recession, we do have that funding source that we can tap into. We also have an operating transfer out of the general fund into the compensated absences fund. Compensated absences are the accruals that are associated with the collective bargaining associations, and that value does exceed $4 million at this point in time. A lot of assumptions in there to generate that value, so we need to continue setting aside funding for that in the event that we do have, they call it a silver tsunami, when you have massive retirements.
It's a lot nicer to take it out of a different account than it is taking it out of everybody's budget.
Absolutely. And it avoids the departments having to hold those positions vacant to realize those accruals. So really, it's continuing to promote public service and making sure that departments can fill the positions sooner than those accruals are realized.
It'd be nice if we could make that come up quicker.
Yeah.
Based on where we are financially right now, it doesn't seem like we're going to.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The next transfer is to the health clinic fund. There is increasing health needs. It's resulting in turnover, the pandemic, changes in the health nurse offices locally. And instead of modifying the tax rate, my recommendation is to provide an operating transfer out of the general fund to support that fund, and with the hopes that we can turn it around in the next year or so. I don't expect this to continue forever. Though it could, depending upon what happens with the health clinics and services that are necessary in the community. And lastly is for transfers out on this slide is the operating transfer out of the general fund into the county jail fund. This is the subsidy to the county jail fund that it's the budget that was being allocated to the jail to operate prior to the ICE contract. And the ICE contract generates, in fiscal 23, we budgeted $2.585 million, and that covers the Tonopah facility operations. So essentially, the ICE contract maintains the Tonopah facility and provides a detention facility in both locations. So that's what that transfer is for.
That includes employees?
That includes employees, yes. Mm-hmm. All right, any other questions on this page? Okay. Next, you're already on the next slide. Thank you, Liz. So we have net proceeds, contingency, and debt service on this page. So we typically transfer out net proceeds revenue into the capital fund for capital projects, considering it's a highly volatile revenue source. I have various proposals for the board that we can go through. We do budget contingency. It's 3% of expenditures is the NRS statute. That's the max that we can budget for contingency. Contingency is an additional what if this comes up, what if that comes up, what if the sheriff's office has a crisis, Storm 51, things of those nature. We can put an item forward to the board to request contingency funding for any items that were not budgeted. If it is unused or underutilized, it will roll back into ending fund balance. So it's not assigned to a department until the board approves it.
This is separate from the stabilization fund.
Correct. It's
right?
separate.
Because the stabilization fund, you have to have a specific, there's only certain ways to tap into that.
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Whereas, go ahead.
And we don't allocate anything out of this contingency into the stabilization?
We do out of the general fund, not out of contingency, but out of the general fund. We're
Contingency, general, then to stabilization.
Yes.
Boom, boom, boom. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, and then we also have debt service that is being paid out of the county general fund, and that includes the shelter bond and the Siemens bond. And so the Siemens bond generates energy savings, and the energy savings, those bills are paid out of the general fund buildings and grounds department. So we are paying debt service, but we are going to receive those energy savings, whether by way of realizing them or if we have to execute the performance section of the contract that requires Siemens to pay the difference. They quoted us certain energy savings to cover the cost of this project, and if it does not, we have we can take legal action against them to make the difference up.
So within a year, once the shelter is operating, we'll be able to look at what the revenue source it brings in. Because they're planning on, we're planning on making some money there too. Because you're gonna be adopting, you're gonna be going for grants and so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
Activities, so that might help with this problem here. But we won't know that for at least a year.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And we can always augment for revenues that were unanticipated or are in excess of what we budget. And when we do that, we're able to increase expenditure budgets based on where those services were realized. Mhm. Okay, so total transfers and contingencies, not including net proceeds, bless you, is 7.982 million, and I built that into the budget as well. Next slide. So this is just a graph of our Nye County general fund ending fund balance, and we have come a long way in the last couple of years, going from a low of 64,000 in fiscal 12, 64,000 when we have, $35 million budget, to fiscal 22, we're projecting and budgeting an ending fund balance of 11 million. Of that 11 million, 5.8 million is committed ending fund balance set aside when the PET funds were closed, and the remaining difference is set aside as a way of mitigating revenue losses or dealing with if a department does end up going over budget substantially, we can use that ending fund balance to absorb it without running into a deficit fund position.
Did you give us the difference?
I'm sorry?
Did you give us the difference after PET?
Oh, I can't. Give me just 1 second. My calculator up. 5.257 million is in excess of the PET committed ending fund balance of 5.8 million. Any other questions on ending fund balance?
What was the highest one in 21? Can you tell me what that was?
Let me open that. Hang on just 1 second.
Looks like almost 14 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Give me just 1 second.
Okay.
I apologize, I don't have this readily available. I should have it here.
We can go right by that. Go ahead with the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Next slide. All right, so we have 3 models. The first model assumes the property tax and net proceed budget as provided by the Department of Taxation. Key caveat to this is if we use those numbers, we cannot add positions in the general fund. So Model 1 is property tax growth of 1.34% compared to prior DTAX projections, and net proceeds at essentially a reduction from prior year of 88.65%. We did build in the 7.1% CIP increases for services and supplies. And we did build in the, all the other items that we discussed, including collective bargaining, the statutory increases, things like that, and the indigent defense program, but no positions in Model 1. In the road fund, which is outside of the general fund, we did build in the 2 mechanics apprentice positions, considering they are not funded from the general fund. It's a completely separate funding source, and those positions can be funded regardless of the general fund. And so in this situation, this is worst case. It's not my recommendation, but Model 1 is worst case. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see basically the breakdown here. So at the top, you'll see our beginning fund balance as budgeted is 11.057 million. We're budgeting 50.3 million in revenues, giving us total resources of 61.367 million. Our department expenditures, based on everything we've discussed, excluding the positions, is 42.9 million. We have all the operating transfers that we've included, and then with the contingency at the bottom of 1.29 million, if you take the total resources less the total expenditures, operating transfers, and debt service, and contingency, that gives us a budgeted ending fund balance of 10.168 million. Essentially, the net impact if contingency is fully exhausted is we would be reducing our ending fund balance by 888,000. But if we don't use contingency at all, we would actually have a positive impact to our ending fund balance of 407,000. What that means is that we are right on the line of living within our means based on these revenue assumptions with this model. And so this is not how I would budget this if this was my budget. So Model 2, if you go to the next page.
We're not putting any of the people that we're trying to put in place.
Correct.
Work.
Right.
Certain things can't even operate, so.
Correct. And not only that, it doesn't follow with our revenue trends and all of the things we've discussed about the growth here in the county.
But it doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't fit. I agree. So our next option is Model 2. So we're going to budget property taxes with the 4% growth trend that we've seen in the past. And we do know that primary homeowners that live in their homes, they can't be taxed out of their homes. There's that NRS that allows for only 3% tax growth for your tax bill. Essentially, you can't be taxed out of your home. Commercial is different, and rental properties are different. So based on historical trends and knowing those statutes, 4% is reasonable. It's probably still low, to be honest, but it's very reasonable and it is conservative. So in Model 2, we're budgeting net proceeds as DTAX is forecasting them, considering they are not used for operations, they don't impact the positions that have been approved or anything. Again, we have the 7.1% CIP, the Indigent Defense Program, and then all of the positions that the board approved in Model 2, as well as the road positions. So that's what Model 2 assumptions include. And if we go to the next slide, it's the same exact chart that we just looked at, but you'll see our total revenues are higher. Our total expenditures are higher. But that also means that if the net impact on our ending fund balance if contingency is fully exhausted is a loss of $1.327 million, whereas the net impact of contingency budget is not utilized is a loss of $31,000. That's pretty much the sweet spot as far as budgets go. Where net impact is essentially zero if we don't lean on contingency. I do build in contingency because we have used it in the past, but in recent years, our budgets are relatively, they're thorough. They cover most of the department needs, and the only things that come up are the things like Storm 51 or legislative changes that creates a need for an additional position and things like that. So
unfunded mandates.
And the unfunded mandates that change, correct. So that is Model 2. And Model 3 is a copy and paste of Model 2, with the exception of net proceeds, is budgeted with a 4.5% growth based on historical trends. And so we would be budgeting, where is that? We would be budgeting $2.445 million as a transfer out to capital. This model does have the most risk because of the fact that net proceeds is volatile. But again, like we've discussed, I'm not sure if that's going to come to fruition. So Model 3 does include all of the positions, property tax at the growth of 4%, and net proceeds being a transfer out. Did the board have questions on Model 3? Ugly?
Why did the capital fund go in excess of $2 million when it was $265,000 in Model 2? I got lost there.
Okay, so net proceeds is the revenue source that we budget as a transfer out to capital.
Okay.
And in Model 2, we're going with DTAX's numbers of $265,000, and in Model 3, we're going with our historical trends, which would be $2.4 million.
Thank you.
I apologize, I was not very clear about that.
No, I think you were. I just missed it.
So those are the three models that I have for Nye County's budgets. And I wanted to discuss with the board. We do have a couple more pages on this presentation, but they're tied to Town of Pahrump. No. So knowing all of this, I welcome any questions the board has, any thoughts associated with the models that I've prepared and presented. And we do have all of these budgets generated, and they are attached as backup to the public hearing item where the board adopts the budget itself, which we can take any of these models and modify if necessary.
My question right off the top between number 1 and number 2 is, we already prioritized positions with funding.
Right.
So why would that funding not be included in Model 1?
Because I needed to show due diligence that I am presenting a document that includes the reporting provided by the state, although it's not reasonable. We've all agreed to that. And in my budget message, that is what I will identify, that the projections provided by the state are not reasonable, and that's why we went with Model 2 or 3.
Okay, so I just want to have a clear understanding. So what we worked on in the budget hearing last month and what we earlier approved today was, in my opinion, which I want to be your opinion, is actually option 2.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Those are all assumptions
Yes.
based on what we did or what we know.
Yes,
But just for that portion,
yes,
not for everything else like net proceeds, et cetera,
Correct.
because those numbers just don't add up.
correct.
So is there a hybrid where we can accept that, but leave alone the net proceeds portions as is?
That's what Model 2 is.
That is what Model 2 is?
Correct.
Okay. And then Model 3 says, well, we think the historical trend with net proceeds is
Correct.
a lot higher.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
That's dangerous.
exactly.
That's like working on ice right this minute.
Well, that's
Yes.
why in 2014, we had issues, not just with the recession, because we actually had positions coming out of net proceeds, and then when that took a dip, we had problems.
Yes, that's
And then that led to people losing jobs, big cuts, et cetera, and that's a hack job. We don't want to do that. I'd rather be on the conservative side, pull back. But I think those are reasonable projections those are reasonable projections to be addressing and saying, these are the normal trends. This is what we're seeing here. And I think that also looks at the situation with D-Tax and saying, what's missing?
right. I agree.
Okay, so do we make a motion?
I think we should.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Nye County final budget assumption based on Model 2.
Model 2. Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any public comment on this item? Not seeing any here. Any Tonopah?
And
Any on the phone?
Nobody in Tonopah, Chair.
I'm going to close public comment. Commissioners, you have some questions?
we'll be able to reevaluate. We're going to have the pulse on this situation over the next 6 months, right?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And if something drastically changes or we see something that's very, like a red flag, it's going to come back to us. We're going to make the adjustments. So,
Yes.
I mean, what do we tell all these departments? Because we approve these positions, but I mean, I don't think anything is 100% set in stone. You agree?
Well, I mean, that's the nature of the business that we're in. Nothing is set in stone. We build a budget based on expectations, but it's just like when a person buys a home, you expect to have your job, right? So we expect to see these payments, and if we don't see them, we have to adjust. And that's something that my office looks at regularly.
Understanding that, I mean, we've gone through several steps here. I mean, we did, I believe, a very, very good job on looking at what everybody wanted. I understand everybody's not going to get what they want, unfortunately, because, we knew what kind of money we were getting. And then again, we have other things that are outside of us that we have to go look at as well. So I think from a due diligence, I think we're looking pretty good. So commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Jabor, you have anything?
No, sir, thank you.
Commissioner Cox?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Strickland? Well, let's call for the question.
Aye.
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 Ronnie's aye.
Jabor's aye.
That gives us 5-0. We're on our way to someplace else now. So with that, item number 27.
Chair, before we move on, since there was discussion in here about town of Pahrump, do we want to touch on that while we're here?
No, I want to take care of the judge so we can get her out of here. She probably has something to go do. So let's open up number 27.
Copy that.
Item 27 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to approve the open position court administrator as a public employee retirement system critical needs position per NRS 286.523, which allows district court to reemploy a retiree for a limited time while district court is searching for a replacement.
Good morning, Commissioners. First of all, thank you. I had an obligation in Las Vegas this morning and drove back about 100 miles an hour to get here. So thank you very much. I appreciate trailing us. I'm Judge Kimberly Wonker. I'm the judge for 5th Judicial District Department 1. As you know, you approved this court administration position well over a year ago. We have advertised through the Human Resource Department here at Nye County on multiple occasions. We are unable to locate anyone with the qualifications that we need to be the court administrator. We've had everyone from funeral home directors to folks who just don't have the qualifications. Jerry Clifford worked for the 5th Judicial District Court out of our Tonopah office for years. She retired a few years ago with 31 and a half years experience. She is qualified to handle the court administrator position. Both Judge Lane and I agree that she is the best candidate for this position and that she is willing to come on board as we continue to search. However, in order for her to do that, we have to ensure two things. One, that it doesn't adversely affect her retirement, and that doesn't adversely affect her lifetime health benefits. So, but she is willing to come back. It is a critical needs position for us. We have, as you know, we're not just Nye County, we're Nye and Esmeralda counties. We have some very serious issues going on throughout the 5th Judicial District, so it is absolutely essential that we get someone with Ms. Clifford's qualifications. She is the only candidate she's the only candidate we've ever had that has district court experience. Why is that so important? Because we answer to the administrative offices of the courts. We are responsible for certain audits and other statistical reporting, and she understands exactly what is needed by the Nevada Supreme Court.
Judge, I want to make something clear. I think you did say Judge Lane also was agreed with this person.
Yes, I brought Louise Mulvey, his JEA, and she can speak to that.
Great, good.
He's definitely agrees and is on board.
Very good, thank you. It makes a lot, makes it better. Okay, thanks.
Chair,
Sure.
I'll make a motion to approve the open position court administrator as a public employee retirement system critical needs position per NRS 286.523.
Second.
I have a motion, second, thank you. Any public comment on this item? On the phone?
No, Chair.
Anybody up in Tonopah?
Nobody in Tonopah, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to close public comment. Commissioners, do you have any questions on this?
Mr.
Again-
Chair, just to clarify,
No, go right ahead. You may be saying the same thing I'm getting ready to say. Go ahead.
just a clarification, so that NRS allows this position to be deemed a critical needs position for 2 years. I just wanted to make sure if you wanted it longer, or not, you can't do it longer,
Can't
but
do it longer.
for
So,
how long you wanted it.
Judge, you understand that that's the 2-year position?
I do understand that, and I should mention that this position that Ms. Clifford will be working out of Tonopah.
Okay, thank you. So it's good to know that,
Mr. Chair.
go ahead, Commissioner.
Go ahead, Mr. Chair, after you finish.
No, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Wonker and Ms. Louise, for coming for this issue. I have one question, please, because the other question was answered due to Judge Lane concurring with this item in agreement. So, Judge Wonker, you mentioned that you're also over Esmeralda, and Esmeralda being our neighboring county. Will Esmeralda be able to share a portion of this if this is approved? Do we move forward with this?
Yes, I met with
Mr. Chair, I apologize, I didn't want to interrupt Commissioner Jabor, but we did lose connection with Tonopah, on the phones. So we'll have to end the meeting until we reconnect.
So we lost communication.
Yeah, just pause the meeting so we can call back in.
Okay, so. Well, but, thank you.
Is it still gone?
Sorry, Judge.
No problem. Thank you.
Lovely. Well then.
It's only take a few minutes, right?
AT&T, how can we help?
Hand raising is on.
ladies and gentlemen, commissioners, I think I have enough people here to continue, so we're back on the item 27. Judge Walker, go right ahead.
One of the things that it's not clear to me, that obviously there's a difference between working as an employee and as a contract employee. And the idea here was that we don't in any way impact Ms. Clifford's retirement, because obviously she worked for the county 31 and a half years. She has lifetime medical benefits. So I will tell you that we just saw Alona, and Alona said, well, it could impact the amount of money that she can make if she comes back as an employee. So I would ask you to approve it that way. However, then I will speak with Ms. Clifford, and I think she has to figure out if she wants to come back as a contract employee. We'll be back. We're going to be back on our court reporter because you approved us to rehire Cecilia Thomas, and she has an EIN and wants to come back as a contract employee. But I will tell you, because we didn't realize that at the time, I've had to cancel court already. We have a real critical need on a court reporter. We just can't get anybody out here. I'm currently using 2 court reporters that are coming in via Blue Jeans on all my criminal. And so, but they're unavailable on the days in question. So we'll be back on that. So I'd ask today if you'd approve it as an employee. Our goal is to start July 1st with Ms. Clifford for a variety of reasons, one of which, yes.
I don't believe this item is agendized so that we can do such.
No, it can't be.
No, I'm not asking you to agenda, what I'm saying is I may be back, what it's agendized as for an employee. So I'm asking you to go ahead and approve that and telling you that I may be back.
Correct.
Okay, thank
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hold on, commissioners. I understand what you're asking for. We'll put a new agenda item for, on June 7th. I know it's getting close, cutting close. I know I got the look. It's cutting close. So I know how important this is, because we can't be canceling court because it's causing some other issues. So if it's possible, we could get this on the June 7th as an EIN person. In other words, it'd be a contract labor. That'll work for you, correct, Judge?
Right, that'd be fine. And we may be able to pull that off if we decide that, if Ms. Clifford decides that she's fine as coming on as an employee, then I've already got her approved. And in response to Mr. Jabor's question, I did meet with the Esmeralda County Board of County Commissioners. I explained to them what we were doing, and that, in my opinion, that they had to share the cost. I'm not sure how that cost sharing is going to occur. We have very few cases in Esmeralda County, so I will tell you that 99% of our work is in Nye County.
So, again, I want to make sure we're clear here. County Manager, you heard. She's asking us to approve this item now, as it is, and then when it comes, if in fact she doesn't want to do it this way, we got 2 items that have to come back on the agenda. So we have to rescind what we have getting ready to approve. Does that make it clear? Just want to make sure it's clear.
Gives options.
So, commissioners, I have a motion, I have a second. And we call for public comment. And I've closed public comment.
We have public comment?
There is comment on the phone.
Thank you.
The caller is unmuted. Please speak and spell your name for the record.
Sir,
Yeah, sorry about that.
please
Tim
state.
Bohannon, B-O-H-A-N. We had technical difficulties. I was actually called in on the Nye County budget general comments, but could not get in because of our technical difficulties. I had no comment on this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to come back at item 7.
Thank you, Mr. Bohammond. Thank you. All righty. So, commissioners, I'm closing public comment.
Blundo's aye.
Hold on a second.
Excuse me.
Town Manager.
So the 2 items that are coming back next time are for the board to consider a professional services agreement or some type of other contractual arrangement for this position. And then 2, I just wanted to clarify, so you'd be rescinding action taken today But that only gets rid of the critical needs designation. If in fact the position is filled through contractual arrangement, then you wouldn't need the employee position.
Correct.
So you could probably rescind that action.
Correct, that's what we're talking about. Yep. And make sure we put in there that if we have to modify something, so it's,
We got to have some wiggle room in how that's written.
right, so amend and adopt or some kind of language, just to make sure. All righty, commissioners.
I'd just like to ask Judge Wonker if she's okay with the way this is stated and what's happening.
I am. I mean, obviously, the person that we want back is Jerry Clifford. She's excellent at the courts. She understands both northern and southern Nye County, and she understands Esmeralda. She understands the issues. We've discussed those with her, both Judge Lane and I, and we've looked together at all of the candidates, and we're in agreement that she is really the only qualified candidate that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioner comments?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Hold on a second. That's the reason why I asked.
Sorry, Commissioner Jabour.
Commissioner Jabour, go ahead.
You jumped the gun, Commissioner Strickland. I just want to share with my sentiments as well. It'll be nice to have Miss Jerry Clifford back. She's professional and knowledgeable and knows the system, and she'll be a great asset for both the county and the courts. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, commissioners, I'll call for the question.
Aye.
Lundo's aye.
Aye.
Jabour is aye.
Thank you. All right, item number 7. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that.
All right, you're twisting my arm. Let's go to lunch. You want to push through? I mean,
Or how much you got left?
I'll take a vote here. How many people want to push through? I know she's got a luncheon date, so with 3 babies.
There's a lot here.
Is there really?
You have Manhattan, Beatty, Gabbs. You have unincorporated town of Pahrump. Yeah, we need to do a well job. And I don't do a well job when I'm hungry.
Okay.
What time are we coming back?
It's approximately 12:30, so 1:45. Okay, sounds good. 2, yep, 1:45. All right.
Whole lot of tea to get that out.
now that we're back in time, I see that we have our folks in Tonopah. He just cut his throat, so I don't know what that means. So, with that, let's go to item number 7. Thank you for everybody coming back.
Item number 7, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for Nye County and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for Nye County for fiscal year 2022 through 2023 based on budget assumption model 1, 2, or 3 as presented.
So I'm going to open the public hearing. Go ahead, Savannah.
I was just going to let the commissioners know that included in the backup is the full budget document for Model 1, 2, and 3, so that the board can discuss any of the models and move forward. I realize in the last agenda item, Model 2 was what was voted on, and so Model 2 starts on page, in the upper right corner, you'll see page 119. That's the beginning of it, and it does follow the presentation that was the last item that we heard. With regards to the positions, the property tax, net proceeds, et cetera.
We are in a public hearing, so.
Yes, we are. 19. Okay, here we are. So with that, is there any, I'm going to open it up to public, so is there any public that wants to talk to this item? Anybody on the phone?
Yes, Chair. The caller is unmuted. Please speak and spell your name for the record.
Hi, this is Tim Bohannon, Bohannon, white sneakers and all. What I'm commenting on is on the budget for Model 2. Looks good. The only concern I would have is inflation hits us harder than we think, and being able to make an adjustment during the mid-year with some of the assumptions, that's my biggest concern with what's coming on with the budget. There are some items that I noticed had reduction in what their balances, fund balances, were going to be from beginning of the year to end of the year, and I'd like to see a way of us mitigating that concern as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon. Any other public comment on the phone?
No, Chair.
Okay, so I'm going to close it for the public, but again, this is a hearing, so commissioners, do you have any questions? Starting with Commissioner.
I don't have any questions. I would actually like to make a motion for discussion to this board. I would like to make a motion to amend model number 2 to include moving $4 million out of the ending fund balance and into capital projects to be earmarked for the community center. May I gain a second?
Chaborro, second for discussion.
Thank you. Now I'd like to discuss it.
Please do.
Okay, so you realize that you've been told by staff that we have $5.2 million in ending fund balance, and we have done quite well progressively over the last 4 years that we've been sitting here, or I've been sitting here. And each time we roll over the ending fund balance and we make investments, and, you know, if we don't need it, it gets rolled over. Sometimes we need it. But that ending fund balance is $5.2 million. I want to remind you, the board, that we had $1 million earmarked from a senator, and we had an additional $2.4 million that we set aside for ARPA, but by the time you get done with administration, is at really $2 million. So now you're at $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
You're really close, I realize, to being able to fund and build this project but originally, we thought it would be 4, so now it's probably 5. And so the reason I'm asking for the additional $4 million to be earmarked, once again, earmarked, is if we were to take our 3 million and put it with that 4, I think not only would we have the ability to build the community center, but maybe even a couple ball fields, and really launch that facility into the next, what our community needs. We do not any longer have a large enough facility to even host the meetings that we need to be hosting. We don't have a facility to be able to take care of people if we were to have an emergency situation again. There is so much need in this community to move forward with a community center of this size and magnitude that would allow us to build a fairgrounds around it, that we can actually have a fair and have, parking and all the things that are necessary when we do host these larger events. And we could easily have a lot more events. And I will point out that this community center could generate funds by renting it out for different events. I'm going to ask if the clerk can read back my motion since the Commissioner Cox has joined the room. Thank you. Do you mind terribly, Kelly?
Oh, not at all, Commissioner. Your motion was to move to amend Model 2 to include moving $4 million out of the ending fund balance and into capital projects to be earmarked for the community center. And it was seconded by Commissioner Jabor.
Okay, that is item 7, Commissioner Cox, and I'm making the
This is for discussion.
for discussion, right? So I'm making the assumption that this board wants to move forward with building a community center. I'm making the assumption this board realizes that this is a big growth factor for our future here in Nye County. And I've asked if we could earmark $4 million out of the ending fund balance, which is $5.2 million. I realize that we just went through and we told people they couldn't have personnel, but personnel costs money for the rest of their careers and then after they've left the county with PERS. A community center is going to give this community what it needs, and we've waited way too long. And every time we have money left over, we just tuck it away and we make interest. And well, we've got over $150 million. And what I've always been told, tucked away, over $150 million. What I've always been told as I manage companies is you should have 3 times the amount, 3 months set aside for any disaster, any budget, any company running, your personal life. Well, we have 3 times and then some. So that's my proposal, and I'm hoping the commissioners, and looking forward to what the other commissioners might have to say about it. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I'm going to ask the comptroller, what does that do to us?
So with Model 2, the ending fund balance that's budgeted is $9.729 million, and that is assuming that contingency of almost $1.3 million is spent, right? We do have the committed fund balance of $5.8 million. That does leave about $4 million to be able to move out. However, we have in our comprehensive financial management policy that identifies that we either need to have the $5.8 million or 16.67% of budgeted expenses as an ending fund balance, and whichever is higher of the two. And so 16.67% of expenses is $7.309 million, which would mean that the board could safely move $2.42 million out of the general fund and still maintain that ending fund balance.
And I got that. That's good, I appreciate that. I don't know if everybody else is on the same page. But again, we did tell some people they weren't going to get employees. They're not here to argue that. So I have an issue with that.
That's true. In the policy, it also identifies that if we have a windfall of money, that to not tie it up in reoccurring expenses, but a one-time capital project, because that's not continuing to incur expenses year over year, So that is an option for the board. I realize it's not favorable when you look at the positions that were requested, but if we're living within our budget for operational expenses, adding those additional positions instead of building a building, like you're going to have reoccurring expenses associated with the employees, and a building will as well. But I mean, you could essentially shut down a building if you ran out of funding, whereas if you run out of operational revenues and budgets, you'd have to lay people off. So it's something the board definitely has to discuss.
Yeah. Before I make my comment, I'll let somebody else talk.
I just have a question for Deborah here. Do you have any proposed place to put this community center?
Oh, yes, Commissioner Cox, we'd love to have it out at the fairgrounds. We have a really nice comprehensive drawing that is like a wish, you know, but it has, we've gotten so far with the fairgrounds that we have gotten our CBDG grants that all of you have been moving right along as commissioners. You have a grant that's now taking care of the sewer system. You have a grant in place that's taking care of the water system, okay? You have a parking lot that's actually built right there, and we are going to plop that community center right in that parking lot and not disturb it and make use of that. And it'll be between the parking lot and the proposed fields that we will then be able to vent out into the fields like we're currently doing at our facilities on Basin.
Yeah, then I've seen the plans of that particular community center.
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure where you had suggested putting it, not that we have a lot of room anywhere else. But I want to remind everybody that VEA owes this community $5 million towards a community center. And they also owe us $5 more million, which was supposed to be donated in land, which they have decided not to donate. And so if they don't want to donate that, here we are back to square one. I want us to go after the $5 million because now we're having to use our own land, which is probably worth that, to build this on. And I'd like them to purchase, or not purchase, but give us the money so we can move forward with that land.
I cannot agree with you more. I think one of the best things we can show as a community is, yes, we were given a commitment from Valley Electric.
Yes, we were.
And we could give them the ability to save face by seeing that we have constructed and they need to participate. I mean, it's one thing to say, you need to give us $5 million so we can build. It's a whole other thing to say, we've self-funded and now you need to pay us back.
Mm-hmm. And I think if they want to keep denying this, then I think it needs to become a court issue because they received money for doing this, and they're still to this day receiving money for doing this. And as far as I'm concerned, they blatantly lied to the people. So they need to be called on the rug for it. And
They wanted that vote so bad, didn't
yeah,
they?
that they bought it.
Yep.
Yep. And so now they need to pay. So,
And frankly, I don't care if they float a bond or however they do it, as long as they don't affect the consumer, right? But it's off subject. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner.
so anyway, that's all I have.
Commissioner Jabor, you have something?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I do. Briefly, I think I know Commissioners Strickland and Cox are onto something. I know that at a recent meeting, we discussed and we asked Manager Sutton to set up a meeting with VEA, and I think that's pending. However, until that happens, just to share is that there are other communities in the state, smaller than ours, that have these beautiful state-of-the-art community centers. And what they do, if you take a look at a smaller scale, the Bob Root Center, where they have different venues there, some people pay, some people don't. But it's definite revenue stream. With a state-of-the-art community center, if we were to move forward with this, would be to our benefit, where money is coming in rather going the other direction. So I would think that because of what our comptroller shared with us, giving us the reality of one number to a different number. The motion would have to be adjusted to that if we were to move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Blendo, you have something?
Could you review one more time about the numbers?
Sure. Excuse me. So, Model 2 budgeted ending fund balance outside of this discussion is 9.729 million. The request was to move 4 million, reduce that ending fund balance by 4 million and move that out into capital, which would leave us with just shy of 5.8 million. We do have that 5.8 million. It is committed fund balance for stabilization as a result of the closure of the PET funds. And so we, in our policy, our comprehensive financial management policy, it identifies that we should have an ending fund balance, the higher of the two, the committed ending fund balance of 5.8 million or 16.67% of budgeted expenditures. And the reason for 16.67% is that's actually 2 months worth of expenditures. Leaving us with an ending fund balance of 7.309 million. So if we went with the 16.67% budgeted ending fund balance of 7.309 million, that leaves available funds of 2.42 million that could be moved out, and we're still maintaining our own policy.
Question.
Yes.
It says should. Does it say shall?
Let me pull the policy up. This is best practices recommended by GFOA, and that's what was built into the policy. But if you give me just a minute, I'll get the shall or.
Okay, and if it is earmarked in this manner, we can always revisit it and say, well, we need to make an adjustment.
Well, what's being proposed is actually moving it out of the general fund and setting it in the capital fund. That way, if construction starts July 1 of this year or July 1 of the following year, the funds are set aside in the capital projects fund specific for this project.
In terms of the unions, what would be our ending fund balance at that time?
Oh,
Assuming the $4 million right now, the way it was motioned, what would be the ending fund balance in terms of the unions?
in the general fund, it'd be 5.729 million.
But I thought we couldn't touch the PET money.
Well, we should reduce the transfer. If it's recommended to go with the higher value, it should be 3.95 million, not 4 million. So we actually have the ending fund balance of 5.8 million that's committed. That said, let me look up the policy and read the exact verbiage to you.
I think, Commissioner Blendo, what I heard is that I originally thought the adjustment per Commissioner Jabor would move to 2.42 million, but I just think I heard 3.954, so clarity will come, I'm hoping.
I agree.
When I talk about the $10 million, I'm talking about that being brought to us above and beyond whatever we hear. I'm not
Correct.
talking about substituting one for the other.
Correct.
Oh, I so agree, because you have a huge fairgrounds to build out. If you were to put 8 ball fields out there, people would be so
And
happy.
just going on a limb, because I know it's a touch off the subject, but several very pragmatic options have been presented to them, and I think they've been very shrewd. They don't even want to come to the board and talk to us about why the rates went up. They have that responsibility to us. We are a ratepayer. So the county is a ratepayer.
Mr. Houston, the last time he came to this board, said he was really sorry he made that comment about the $10 million. So, yeah.
I have a response for you, Commissioner Blendo. So the policy identifies total committed and unassigned general fund balance shall equal at minimum 5.8 million or 16.67% of the total budgeted expenditures for the fiscal year, whichever is higher. And the 5.8 million is the result of collapsing the PET funds in 2016.
So that's a must.
It's a must. Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that did I hear you correct, that 3.954 would be the absolute maximum we should move? Or are you suggesting that we would be better served for the county to move 2.42?
We would be better served, but for the county, for our fiscal stability, but also following our own policy
Policies.
and best practices, to move 2.42 million. That leaves us with the 16.67% budgeted expenditures as an ending fund balance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to kick this around just a little bit more.
Sure.
Fairgrounds is part of the town of Pahrump, correct?
Yes, it's a joint project from what I understand.
It's properties of the town of Pahrump.
Mhm.
Okay. How come we're not looking at a contribution from the town of Pahrump?
We can.
Well, I think we need to talk about that before we even complete this item.
Okay.
Well
Can
done.
we look at it here in this item?
We would have to open the town of Pahrump budget assumption item, but yes.
Which item is that?
Item number,
I don't think we went there yet.
no, we're not, that's 14.
And do we need to close out our motion and second to be able to look at that item?
Oh, so that's 14, isn't it? Yeah. Well, that's an excellent idea, and should we continue this item, open that one, discuss there, and then,
I think you can continue this item. You know,
For during
For-
the meeting, we're going to
for the
continue
meeting.
for the
Yeah.
meeting, not to continue to someplace else. It's just
Right.
continue it to open up another item.
Right.
Okay, so that's what we're planning on doing. We're gonna,
Mr., I apologize, you do have I think you had a motion and a second.
we
on
have a motion in a second, so
Gonna
we're
hold
gonna
that
have
out,
to
or-
withdraw.
Commissioner Jabor, I'm going to withdraw my motion now for further discussion on different item.
I'll also withdraw my second
Okay, so,
on item number 7.
thank you. Let's go open up item number 14.
Item 14, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Pahrump, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Pahrump for fiscal year 2022 through 2023.
Thank you. Again, we open it at the public hearing. I don't know if there's any public out there that want to speak to this item, but I'm going to ask for Savannah to brief us on the town of Pahrump financial.
Sure. Okay, so we did have an approval for Pahrump Valley Fire Rescue overtime. We did have a pending item to discuss the possibility of adding an admin for buildings and grounds for the town of Pahrump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you numbers associated with worst case, assuming if that approval's made, what funding is made available from the town of Pahrump for this purpose. So like Nye County, we came up with the two scenarios, and if the position for buildings and grounds is approved, the ending fund balance that is budgeted will be $2.265 million. And if we follow suit with the county policy, which does encompass the town of Pahrump, we would need to keep 16.67% of expenses, or 2 months' worth of expenses, as ending fund balance, which is just over $1 million. And that would leave $1.263 million in the town of Pahrump that could potentially go towards this program, or this project, excuse me.
So, commissioners, I guess I'll open the public hearing. And anybody from the public want to speak? Anybody on the phone?
No chair.
No, Tim Bohannon's here, so if he wanted to talk. So, thank you. Commissioners, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Well, this just gets more interesting all the time. I guess I would like to, what would I be amending here, though? Just the final budget?
Yeah.
Would not be, is it 1, 2, or 3? We don't have
Excuse
that.
me, for the town of Pahrump, there are only two scenarios. And so it would be, the board would need to decide on the position for the Buildings and Grounds Department, which is item number 16. And then I can tell you which model.
I thought we,
We need to open these items in the correct order. I'm
I'm
just
sorry.
saying.
Well,
We have 14, 15, 16, and 17. Those are all Pahrump items that
They
need
are.
to be done, so. So we just, what I'm asking you guys to do is accumulate the numbers, so
Yep.
we know where we're going.
So this position, that's in a different agenda item, since we haven't approved that yet, that's above and beyond what we did in April, and we ratified today.
Yes, it is.
Yes, correct.
I hear the grumbling.
When you talked about ending fund balance and what would be best for the town of Pahrump, was that with or without the position?
That was worst case, so with the position.
So which option is with the position, please? Or we're not on that item. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chair.
You're on Pahrump.
But it's the second model.
You're on Pahrump. We call it assumptions, goes to the model, I don't know. Potatoes, something, I don't know. All right, so, knowing that, we need to move this item, not gonna close it, but we're gonna kick it down the road, continue it.
So- Well, if it's only based on whatever decision we're about to make, can we have can we amend and adopt allocating funds? I see head shaking here, but just bear with me for just a moment. Allocate those funds where we may want to talk about with the fairgrounds, and then adopt it based on whatever decision we make when we open the other item, and then that item will finalize whatever we do here.
I think that would be a district attorney's office response, but it seems like cart before the horse.
That's same thing with me, yeah.
I agree. I think it's too convoluted, lends itself to confusion.
That's the reason why I was just gonna continue it. We can go to that item,
Let's do that.
and then we'll.
Doesn't hurt anything.
And that is item number 8, correct? Number 15? No, it's fire, sorry. Building and ground 16.
Correct.
So, leaving 14 to go to 16. Remember, everybody's got to keep these numbers in their head.
714, yep.
So let's go to item 16, sir. Possible action, discussion, deliberation to approve. Unbudgeted administration. One.
Item 16 for possible action, discussion and deliberation to approve an unbudgeted administrative secretary position within Town of Pahrump Buildings and Grounds Department and to be funded from 25101 Town of Pahrump General Fund.
Okay, this is not a public hearing, so this is a possible action. So, any public want to talk to this item?
Is Jimmy here? Jimmy Martinez on the phone?
I understand he was calling in. He had a issue with a vehicle in Vegas he had to go pick up.
And she's going to talk to him.
I'm giving public comment. That's okay. It's Samantha Tackett, Tackett, admin manager for the town of Pahrump and Nye County. I would like for the board to consider a contingency if this position is to be approved. It has the potential to impact my department staff-wise, and I would like it to be contingent on a comprehensive and agreed-upon transition plan if one of my staff members is to move over into this position. I'd like for them to remain in our office until we have them their replacement hired and trained.
So you want the position, but you don't want anybody leaving here until we find somebody to fill the position that would be leaving.
Yes. This will be the second time this has happened with the B&G transition, and I can't afford it. This will be potentially the 8th person I've lost in the last year and a half.
And it directly affects us, guys.
And that would be just if that individual were to move.
Yes, Commissioner.
I mean, you can have somebody outside come in, we love them,
Done.
gold standard, it's okay.
In the event that this impacts my department and my existing staff, I would like a transition plan to be contingent on the approval.
Problem is the agenda item doesn't give us that latitude.
Why?
Because there's nothing that says we can amend what we've got. So if we're putting something
Mr.
into the process,
Mr. Chair, but you can direct me to ensure that that happens.
that we can do.
So was
Mr.
that,
Chair.
So with that, Commissioner Jabour, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate Samantha Tackett coming up and addressing this, because this has been one of my major concerns, not just for admin, but for all of the county positions, that this will be put on an agenda if appropriate. Manager Sutton and Director of Human Resources, that nobody leaves if they are to be promoted, do a lateral to a different department, because it absolutely impacts their existing office. And so I appreciate, again, Samantha bringing that to our attention again, and didn't fall by the wayside. It's just with all the moving parts, I'm glad it's going to be revisited, and I'd like to see this across the board.
Okay. With that.
Thank you.
Can I ask for public comment? No public comment on the
No
phone?
public comment, Chair, on the phone, but we do have Jimmy available.
Does Jimmy have anything?
Good morning,
else?
Commissioner. Or, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Commissioners, have any questions for Jimmy?
Yes, have you had a position like this in the past?
No, I have not. This is the first time this position has been brought up.
I've of course looked over, you're having the same problem as Samantha Tackett's bringing up, describing any staff reductions in additional departments experienced in the last 5 years. You've had people that move from your department to Public Works.
Correct.
We had a retirement by your main staffer in administration. Has that position been filled yet?
Administration, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, so we are doing a reorganization of workflow in my office. The functions that Carla provided were reassigned to the specialists in my office that handle them. Finding someone that knows budgets and procurement and AP and contracts is extraordinarily challenging. So instead of doing that, we disseminated that work to the specialists in my office. And we're working on workflows now to streamline Town of Pahrump to mirror Nye County policies.
So in fact, the Town of Pahrump has been left without that body to help administratively, but has gained additional help with the specialists within the finance department.
Specific portions.
Specific portions. Okay, thank you. I have no more questions for Jimmy.
Commissioner Cox? Commissioner Rondo?
Jimmy, do you believe this position's critical? And if you do, please just briefly explain why.
It is critical for as far as, I'm sorry, just trying to catch up on everything. Yes, because if you see on my chart, and I'm not for sure if you know, number, it's on page 6 in my backup. On the very bottom, I believe you see it's page 6, it's Town of Pahrump B&G capital expenses, and down below B&G facility manager. I'm spending several hours of doing admin duty and other stuff, and it does show off of 50 hours a work week. Besides my hours of management duty as well, I'm also doing administration and other requirements that I can have a administrative secretary doing, and really focus on the task in hand that I need and projects that are kind of falling behind in a sense. I want to I want to stay with it and not fall, and this will also help in the overall in everything that we do, especially now that we see more events coming in. I'll be able to use this person to assist me with keeping up with all the events and keeping up with the admin to make sure they're notified as well as what changes come on. Just as we saw in the last with Mr. Dugan, stuff has changed this Balloon Fest, we'll be able to keep up real time with the admin office so they're aware at all times.
That's his answer, yeah. Thank you.
I was just hoping just to let him feel like he answered the question. Anybody else got questions for Jimmy?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go to it.
Thank you. Jimmy, Good afternoon. This is Jabor up in Tonopah. Jimmy, on your backup page 3 at the top, number 3, part of your justification shows that it's causing overtime hours for you and your foreman.
Correct.
I did go to your page 6 and calculated your hours times the hourly, and you're spot on. I'm just curious, sir, if you're able to tell us how much overtime against this new position has been incurred.
How much overtime again? I'm sorry, has been what?
How much overtime? You mentioned overtime in your justification. I'm just curious. Is the overtime that overwhelming that it's against the new position, the salary for the new position?
I don't have that position. I'm not understanding your question. I apologize.
Commissioner, if I may.
Go ahead.
Jimmy, I think he's asking if you take the total amount of overtime, how does it stack up against the proposed salary for the requested secretary?
So with though unfortunately those numbers I do not have in front of me, but my foreman is spending largely amount of hours in overtime, and I apologize, I don't have those numbers for you, and myself that are spending. So time frame that I have, I'm running. So say if I work a 6 to 3, I'm staying here from, past 3, I'm staying here from, till 6 till 7. And then my foreman is also working his hours 6 to 3. He's also working over than that. So we're running anywhere combined 6 to 8 hours, roughly, in overtime hours. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
Okay, it does, Jimmy. Thank you. And that's almost an 8-hour day for somebody that you're requesting.
Yeah.
Are you doing that on a regular, consistent, daily basis?
Yes, I am.
Savannah, can you pull that up?
Well, no, but if you're using overtime 1.5 times your salary.
Right, but Jimmy is a
different.
salaried individual, so I can't.
Well, no, but I'm using it as a calculation.
Oh, yes,
And
okay.
if you're doing it just on her base salary or his base salary, whoever that position is filled, so, it's 1.5 times the salary. So it's a little bit more than 8 hours. It's probably somewhere around 10, maybe 12 hours. So I think I understand where he's coming from, but does the position cover all the hours that he's going to be doing it anyway, or a portion of it? So you guys need to tell me what you think.
Oh, and I know it's only going to be more because I'm hoping that we'll be having more events.
I guess, and give me some leeway here. Why isn't tourism helping out? They have events. Events are tourism.
Well, he's talking about more than the tourism stuff. He's talking about other activities he's got to perform that he's now doing clerical work to do documentation. We're doing echoing.
Yeah, it's Jimmy.
Okay. So, it's a little bit different than just to do the event activity. So,
Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
does everybody feel that they had, a good understanding of where he's coming from?
Yeah, he's doing the work.
Right. Him and his,
Right, and
his
he's a
foreman.
salary guy, so he's looking to alleviate his plate.
So he can probably do more stuff.
So he can administer and pay attention to other.
So does that still leave us with the other person doing the overtime, and we're only
both are.
eliminating Jimmy, or are we going to eliminate 2 overtimes and put in 1 employee?
There's only 1 overtime, he's salary. It's just he's having to put that many extra hours in. I get it, and I understand
So
where
are
you're trying
we
to come
just
to
paying him-
financial.
And his foreman his foreman's not salary, his salary, right? So his time is going up as well.
I know we asked a question about how much money, so I don't think it, I
don't
think
think
we
it's a
have the
big deal.
answers we need, right? So
I don't think-
fire it off.
Well, the salary part of it, does that mean he's still getting at least paid for his regular hours? Or he's
salary,
just
salary.
throwing it in free?
You get 40 hours, it's 40
He's
hours.
working for free.
Yeah.
He's
But
working
he's
for
putting
free, and
in
he's
like
gonna burn
60
out.
hours and he's working for.
gonna burn
Excuse me,
out.
excuse
Paid
me.
for 40?
Correct that statement. He's not working for free. He gets paid a wage. He has those responsibilities, and I will say, and I'll defend Jimmy, that he's taken them on and saying, hey, guys, I've been doing it all, but I just can't juggle 15 plates anymore. I'm great at juggling, but not 15. 15's too much. Short term is one thing.
Correct.
Long term is
Correct.
something's gonna break.
That's what, I think we're all saying the same thing.
Okay, fire,
Other than
shoot.
somebody works for free.
Are you good, Commissioner Cox? I'd like to make a motion. You feeling good about that?
Well, I lost my train of thought now because I was talking and everybody else started, so I don't remember where I was going with it. But
We're making good points.
I guess the point was, is he at least getting paid his normal salary for his like he gets paid by the hour or just by the day?
40 hours a week.
8 hours a day. That's all he gets paid is 8 hours, regardless of whether he puts in 10 or 12. Kind of sounds like us.
That's salary. That is what his salary.
Yeah. So, anybody here need some help? Okay, I understand it.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the unbudgeted administrative secretary position within the Town of Pahrump Building and Grounds Department to be funded from 25101 Town of Pahrump General Fund with the additional request.
Direction to
staff
Jaboris seconds.
to have a contingency transition plan from staff.
You should have just allocated some other stuff. He already gave you a second, so just keep going with the motion.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Is there any other public comment on this? Just so in case again.
No, Chair.
Thank you.
He says something positive, we should revoke the second and the motion. Just pull it all back.
Tim Bohannon, Bohannon. I'd like to mimic what Leah was talking about with Jimmy's hours and working as much as he does. He does a lot of time, a lot of hours. I've seen it, I've watched it, and having that position will help the burnout from happening.
So I have a motion and a second. Anything else? We'll call for the question.
Aye.
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 Jaboris, aye.
Williams, aye, 5-0. So we'll go back to item number 14.
Item 14, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Pahrump, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Pahrump for fiscal year 2022 through 2023.
Now I need a
Do we
motion
have to open public again? Because it's a hearing?
We will.
Okay, I didn't know, sir.
So, I'm just looking at the item, so I know where we gotta go with it. So with that, I'm gonna open up public hearing on this again. On the phone.
No comment on the phone.
Thank you, Sam. Closing public comment.
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 final budget for the town of Pahrump using model number 2 with the additional model 2 to include moving $1.263 million out of ending fund balance and into capital projects earmarked for the community center.
I'll
I have a motion. I have a second.
That was with the approved position too, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a second?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Jim.
Jaboris
Thank you.
seconds.
That was Commissioner Cox. So, any other public comment? I don't need, we're done with that. Thank you. I close public comment. Commissioners, let's call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Jaboris, aye.
1.2.
All right, we're going back and we'll open up item number 7.
Item number 7, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for Nye County, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for Nye County for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, based on budget assumption model number 1, 2, or 3 as presented.
So now you can
Make your motion.
rethink your motion. Well, make the motion, we go.
I'll make the motion. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022, 2023 final budget for Nye County and to adopt model number 2, to amend model number 2 to include moving $2.42 million out of the ending fund balance into capital project and earmarking for fairgrounds projects.
Do I have a second?
DeBoer seconds.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Tim Bohannon, Bohannon. Before closing this, you may also want to consider a point that Commissioner Blunda was trying to raise about potentially the tourism as well, to consider funds from there as part of this earmark as well. But definitely in favor of going the direction of funds for, CapEx funds for the fairgrounds. Thank you.
Just so everybody understands where that fund, where their funds come from. We don't put a lot of money into them. Most of their stuff comes from room tax.
Correct.
So that'd be a little difficult. Thanks. Good point. So I got a motion, a second. I've had public comment. Anybody on the phone?
No, Chair.
Closing public comment. Commissioners?
Aye.
Aye.
DeBoer's aye.
Thank you, Commissioners, for your
Carboni's
support.
aye.
Thank you.
Sounds like we have $6.63 million to go build a facility. Thank you.
Steps in the right direction.
So,
Mr.
let's
Chair.
go to item number,
Mr. Chair, can we go to item number 4?
let's go to item number 4, so we can pull some items.
Item number 4, approval of the agenda. With the approval of the final budget for the town of Pahrump, we no longer need item 15 or 17.
And let's
So with
run
that,
through the
let's
rest.
close that item, and let's go on to item number 18.
Item 18, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Beatty, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Beatty for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, based on Nye County's budget assumption model number 1, 2, or 3 presented.
Commissioners, included in your backup is only one model. The agenda item was written as such in the event that we needed to make changes on the fly, but we did not need to. Risk management panned out how we discussed earlier. The town of Beatty did hear the tentative budget presented to them by Ms. Enriquez, and we walked through all of the items with them, got their approval on the final budget column that is presented before you.
Okay, great. So I'm going to open up the public hearing. Anybody from the public wanted to, and he's gone again. Anybody from public want to speak on the phone?
No comment on the phone, Chair.
I'm going to close the public portion of this public hearing.
Chair, I'm going to make a motion to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any other comments? I'll call for the question.
Aye.
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 0.
DeBoer's aye.
Everybody's aye, 5-0. Item number 19, GABS.
Item 19, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Gabbs, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Gabbs for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, based on Nye County's budget assumption model number 1, 2, or 3 as presented.
Again, Commissioners, we only had one model option. It is attached in your backup. We did try to present to GABS, but we experienced quorum issues. So we will be presenting this after the fact to them, but we have been before them each of the last 5 years, 6 years or so that I've been doing budgets, and we have built in contingencies to be able to take care of any of their needs that we may not have heard before this item was approved.
Does that include the sewer system and so on?
The sewer system, that's gonna be a grant-funded project when we move that forward, as well as ARPA. There was some funding set aside as well with ARPA, but yeah, we are moving forward with the grant-funded portion of that
I
project.
just wanted to make that comment again. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Thank you. So I'm going to open the public hearing and open the public portion. Anybody from the public want to speak on this item? Anybody on the phone?
There's no comment on the phone.
Anybody in Tonopah?
Jabs 19. Nobody in Tonopah, Chair.
Closing the public comment of the public hearing. And I'm going to call for you guys. What do you want to do?
I'd like to make a motion, Chair. I move to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Close the public hearing. Let's call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Jabor's aye.
5-0. Moving on to, everybody's aye, by the way. Manhattan,
Item number 20, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Manhattan, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Manhattan for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, based on Nye County's budget assumption model 1, 2, or 3 as presented.
Commissioners, like the last two unincorporated towns we prepare budgets for, we did not need models 2 and 3. So there was only one budget attached in your backup. We don't have a board for the town of Manhattan, so we do our best with past experience to build out this budget, and it's attached if you have any questions.
so public hearing is open. I want to know if there's any public that wants to speak.
Tim Bohannon, B-O-H-A-N-N-O-N. One of the thoughts when I was going through the Manhattan budget was growth percentage. I mean, I know our growth percentage is fairly high in Pahrump, but what's the expectations, and are we taking a look at it not only next year, but pre-planning for the year after as well to accommodate if we need to spread the budget? Thank you.
Well, they ended up with a fair ending fund balance. It's not anything, I mean, it's a lot better than what I've seen for GABs, so there may be some room in there for maneuvering if there is any growth. Right now, I don't think we've had much growth in Manhattan at all.
No. It's a really small community. I think there may be 100 people that live there in total. Yeah, the ending fund balance that we have budgeted is, looks like 40,000, and total expenditures is 40,000. So we have a healthy ending fund balance.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. To me, it didn't look like we needed to look at anything. So with that, did I say public hearing already? Everybody from the public? Yeah, we already got public. I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing. And I'm going to look for a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Yes.
Oh,
Second.
excuse me.
Second.
That sounded like Commissioner Jabor made that motion.
Commissioner Board, it sounded like you made the motion.
No, it sounded like him. That's what I heard.
So who made the motion?
No, I heard Commissioner Blundo make the motion.
My mic
Thank
was
you.
So let's try this again. Why don't you
I
make the
move to
motion?
adopt.
Go ahead and make the motion, Mr. Commissioner Jabor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're getting feedback here. Yes, I move on item number 20 to adopt Manhattan's final budget.
Thank you.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Call for the question.
Aye.
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 Jabor's aye.
Everybody's aye. The public hearing is closed. Number 21.
Item 21, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the Pahrump Pool District, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the Pahrump Pool District for fiscal year 2022 through 2023.
Commissioners, included in your backup is the budget as presented. This is a specific tax rate for the pool district specifically, and that is the sole purpose of this budget, is to support and operate the pool in Pahrump.
I'm going to open the public hearing and I'm going to ask for any public comment on this item. Any on the phone?
There's no comment on the phone.
Close public comment.
Motion to adopt.
I have a motion to adopt. Do I have a second?
Cox.
I have a motion and a second from Donna Cox, or Commissioner Cox. Let's call for the question.
Aye.
Aye.
Jabor's aye.
Everybody's aye. It's 5-0. And the public hearing is closed. So let's go to item number 40. General
Mr.
public.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. Could we go back to the Manhattan item?
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. What's wrong?
Item number 20, 10 o'clock timed item for possible action, public hearing on the fiscal year 2022 through 2023 final budget for the town of Manhattan, and discussion and deliberation to adopt or amend and adopt the final budget for the town of Manhattan for fiscal year 2022 through 2023, based on Nye County's budget assumption model 1, 2, or 3 as presented. The reason I asked for that to be reopened is because we just had a little bit of a discrepancy with the motions that were made. Commissioner Blundo, you made the motion. Commissioner Jabor seconded it. There was some chatter, but those motions, your original motion was never formally rescinded. So if you could just rescind that, and Commissioner Jabor, if you could rescind that.
I never made a motion. I mean, he didn't have the mic on. He made his comment, but he didn't have the mic on.
Okay, well, I heard a motion, and Kelly did too, so that's why we were checking.
And also, shouldn't we have said Model 1? I realize we didn't have 3 models, but we did not disseminate that we were taking Model 1. I don't know.
There was, yeah.
So,
There was only one, so.
but yeah, there was only one, but that's not what the agenda reads.
Right.
I'm sorry, it was she said Commissioner Blundo made the motion and Donna seconded it.
Well,
And then Commissioner Jabor made the motion, and then it was.
I asked for the motion to be redone.
Well, if you want to reopen right now.
We did.
It is open.
Okay, to rescind prior action or actions, you can do that. There's a point made that there's been a discussion on which model this is going to be based on, and that was not included in Commissioner Jabor's motion, as I recall it.
So, everybody, can you rescind your motion and your second?
I'll rescind my second.
I'll rescind a motion that was not made.
Commissioner Jabor?
Jabor will rescind all motions.
Okay, well, not all.
And
Just the one on Manhattan. All right, so we've read the item. Now that it's open again, I'm going to call for public comment because it's a public hearing. Any public comment? Any public comment on the phone?
No, Chair.
I'll close the public comment portion of the public hearing. Commissioners, call for the question, call for motion.
New motion, right?
yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a new motion.
Right ahead, sir.
I move to accept, to adopt Manhattan's fiscal year 2022-2023 final budget with the assumption of Model 1.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any other comment? Not seeing any. Call for the question.
Aye.
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 Jabor's aye.
Everybody's aye. 5-0. Public hearing is closed.
See that $40,000 ending fund budget threw everyone for a loop, huh?
Yeah, I guess. They have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
Item number 40, general public comment, up to 3 minutes time limit per person. Actions will not be taken on matters considered during this period of time until specifically included on an agenda as an action item. Any public comment? Going once, going twice. Phone?
Not on the phone.
Closing general public comment. Item number 41. Commissioner managers' comments. This is items limited to announcements or topics, issues proposed for future workshops or agenda. Commissioners.
I have a question for Tim.
Question, or you have something you want to put on, add to a workshop or agenda?
I want to ask him a question about an item that we brought up before. Yeah, about flagpoles at the fire stations. I just wanted to know if anything got done. Yeah, I already gave him direction.
We
Well, I
had-
just gave him, I gave him this direction for Kellogg, and then somebody added in the fact that apparently none of the fire stations had flagpoles, so we should put them on all of them. So I was
County manager?
wondering if anything happened yet.
I'll check on that, Commissioner. I thought we had flagpoles, but I'll verify that.
Well, when it came through the minutes, it says, Commissioner Cox said there were no flagpoles at the Kellogg Fire Station, and she received a couple of requests for one and would like someone to address that. And then Commissioner Carboni said flags were needed at every fire station. So I just wondered if that's been moving any, because that was in September of 2021.
Long time ago.
Yeah, so I just,
And I think it was brought up again earlier, after that, too. So. And I think that was brought up during the time we asked for signage, too.
oh yeah, that's below here. But I saw an item where it said that we already ordered signage, so we're okay on that one. It was just the flagpoles I was worried about.
Commissioner Jabor, you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, to be redundant, as a reminder, Jim Butler Days here in Tonopah, the next 3 days. It's a lot of fun, great event, great people. We'd love to see everybody from Nye County and the surrounding counties come and take part in these great festivities. Also, I'd like to compliment you on your blue shirt, Mr. Chair. I know you're trying to look like me, but it is a nice shirt.
It's actually green.
It's actually blue and green.
You're trying to be rotten to me again.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. He had me a little confused there.
Commissioner
Thank you,
Blanco has a
Commissioner.
nice blue
Appreciate
shirt
it.
on.
Any other commissioners?
Our forefathers, and directors, our forefathers fought, bled, and died for us to exercise our right to vote. Everyone, early voting starts May 28th. Go vote.
Nothing, sir.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, with
Thank you.
that, we're going to move on to the next item, which is we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Good work, commissioners. Wow,
Good day.
that budget's tough. And you wondered why I wanted to take a lunch break.
Haven't figured that out yet. Oh.